The low roll of drums in Storm's End's great hall faded into a hush like distant thunder, and every man present felt the air itself seemed to thicken as though some vast unseen hand pressed against stone and sinew alike. Stannis Baratheon stood rigid beside the rough-hewn table of driftmark oak, jaw clenched hard enough to whiten the blood beneath his skin. The firelight made an iron mask of his face and threw orange sparks along the ridges of his bald scalp. Outside, waves shattered against the fortress walls, and the voices of gulls rang sharper than steel drawn in frost. Melisandre of Askai glided in the space between two torches, her scarlet silks whispering along the flagstones. No cloak or veil muted her flame-colored hair tonight, its rivers burned unhindered, catching highlights that seemed to flicker of their own will. Davos Seaworth, whose good hand worried the small knucklebone pouch at his belt, saw how every gaze followed her, no matter their fear or scorn. Even the hard-eyed Sellsword Salador Sans swallowed once as she passed. "My king," she said, voice low yet resonant, as if some deeper throat beneath hers offered each syllable in harmony. "The night grows short, and so does your hour." Stannis's eyes, pale as washed stone, fixed on hers. "What hour have I left?" Tywin Lannister rides for King's Landing. With him ride the strength of the West, the gold of Casterly Rock, and the fear men bear the lion's roar. Should he reach the city before we break its walls, Joffrey will be secured and our cause will founder. Again, Davos dared step forward. "Grace, Lord Tywin is leagues away. The Blackwater chain still bars the river mouth. We have ships, soldiers, and men within the capital who would open gates." Stannis cut him with a look sharp as a king guard blade. "Would, could, might? The battle was ours at the Blackwater." Then wildfire kindled the god's damned sky, and Lord Tywin rode through the ashes like a savior on a warhorse of molten gold. His name alone unmanned thousands. "I will not suffer that chance again." Melisandre's smile curled like smoke. "Chance is a mask, Lord Stannis. Behind it stands design. And design is the province of shadow." When she opened her palm, Davos glimpsed a darkness deeper than torchlight could cast, a shape that shifted like oil atop water, refusing to become still long enough to be named. It was gone again in an instant, yet the chill it brought lingered in the marrow of every watcher. "Not here," Stannis said, though his voice trembled with something that was not fear. "We sail this very night. Dragonstone will shelter what must be done." The hall breathed as one. Men turned their eyes away, remembering Renly's silk pavilion, torn and blood-soaked, remembering a winged shadow striding across canvas and flesh. Remembering how easy the world could change when a woman reached into her womb and drew forth death-given form. The seahorse, Davos's own Black Betha refitted for stealth, cleaved moonlit waters on a southeasterly tack, bound for the lee of Dragonstone. Sailcloth black as charred parchment caught the wind. Stannis kept to the prow, standing immovable, speaking to no man. Behind him, Melisandre had claimed the cramped captain's cabin for her work. Davos knew the smell that would seep beneath the door soon, rich candle wax blended with fennel, pepper, and something cloyingly sweet that no spice ship carried. He tasted it still in nightmares. Wind rasped canvas and wood. Oars lifted and dipped without splash. The moon rode high before the door creaked open and the red woman stepped onto the deck wrapped in nothing but her scarlet shift. Beneath silk as thin as spider thread, her belly rose full as any expectant mother's, though Davos had seen that belly flat the day before. She spoke no word, though her red eyes rested on each man in turn, laying a weight upon them that felt like judgment. At last they found Stannis. He faced her with mouth a thin, bleak line, then nodded once. She turned and descended the narrow companionway to the hold. Silence claimed Black Betha more absolute than any prayer. The pitch of the hull changed, a hush of water and soft clink of chain told Davos they had hove to, letting current bear them in a slow circle. Hoth, the bosun, made the sign of the father across his brow. Old Peak muttered a prayer to the mother. Davos would have prayed too, but the gods seemed very far from Dragonstone's shadow. From the hold rose a mewling gasp, the voice of a woman in labor and of something else entirely, a groan at once infant and abyssal. Deck timbers vibrated beneath Davos's boots as though a bell tolled deep within the hull. Then came a scream so thin it pierced marrow. Torches guttered. One by one they extinguished, leaving only the moon. When the hatch burst open, a darkness spilled forth that swallowed starlight. It slithered, flowed, coalesced, a man's shape blacker than coal smoke, misty at the edges, yet sharpened at the brow into points like a stag's rack. Its eyes were two red embers burning without heat. It turned its face, no, not a face, a void shaped like one, toward Stannis. For an instant, Davos saw the king's features mirrored in that void, twisted and vast. Then the shadow leapt. It struck the deck with no sound, no mass, yet timber groaned beneath. A gust of freezing wind rolled across the ship and every torch reignited in the same heartbeat, their flames now blood-red. The shadow was gone. Only a faint tremor of cold lingered, sliding westward faster than wind or wing. Davos ran to the hatch. Melisandre lay curled like a child among spilled wax and damp straw, sweat on her brow where no hair clung, eyes half-lidded, lips parted in some silent prayer. She looked bone-thin once more, her womb empty, yet a faint crimson glow pulsed faintly beneath her skin, each beat synced to Stannis' heart 2 decks above. Lord Tywin Lannister, Hand of the King, Warden of West and Rock alike, rode through the mud of the Rose Road more swiftly than any column aught, driven by the iron engine of his will. His sons followed, Jaime shackled by honor at the city he despised, Tyrion adrift in the aftermath of wildfire and father's stern rebuke. Ser Kevan kept the lines marching, barking orders forged in Casterly Rock's martial halls. Ahead lay King's Landing, bruised and half-healed from Stannis' assault. The river still stank of tar and burned men. Yet banners flew from the walls, the lion above the stag, and the small folk cheered each glint of gilded armor. Tywin allowed himself no flush of pride, victory yet remained to be secured like a coin in hand. Night fell and their banners were furled. Campfires dotted the meadows outside the Gate of the Gods. Far above, clouds scud across a swollen moon. Tyrion, excused to his pavilion, poured wine and thought of Shay and scars both healed and unseen. Jaime donned a cloak of crimson wool and walked the perimeter alone, golden hand cold in the wind. Ser Kevan inspected pickets, then returned to the command tent where Tywin studied parchments. Outside, a sentinel called the first hour of the dog watch. Lamplight flickered at the canvas door. Tywin dipped a quill in oak gall ink, eyes scanning supply tallies. A draft stirred the parchment. He frowned. The flap lay closed, guards posted. Still, the lamp flame bent sideways though no breeze touched his cheek. Then he smelled it, cold, not like winter night but like damp stone beneath an ancient keep, air unbreathed for centuries. He looked up. The lamp guttered red. Across the tense drape of shadow loomed a silhouette, tall, antlered, rippling. Tywin's hand dropped to the dagger on his belt. The blade passed through emptiness when slashed. A noise like distant surf sounded and the shadow stepped forward though its feet never touched the earth. "My guards," Tywin began, voice steady. "Lannisters do not The shadow's hand, if hand could be word for that Talon smoke, pierced armor of light and gold, skin and rib. Cold sank into Tywin's lungs as though water filled them. Thoughts slowed not in fear but in austere calculation. Who would rise? What debts owed? The rock swaying of air against claim. He tried to shout but breath would not stir. His gaze traveled downward, the dagger's bright steel, the flicker of lamp, the blackness pushing through his chest like oil rising through water. Pain flared once, brief as a match struck in a storm. Then nothing. The shadow withdrew, leaving no wound, only emptiness where heart and will had lived. Tywin Lannister fell without a sound but the brush of silk against maps. Ink spilled across parchment shaped like a spreading continent. Mountains turned to bleeding night, rivers to pooling darkness. And the shadow melted into the tent wall, vanished into soil and starlight. Outside, campfires guttered. Horses screamed. Men stumbled from sleep, blades bare. No enemy charged, no storm broke, but every flame along the Rose Road burned the color of blood for the time it took a heart to beat twice, and in those seconds the lion's roar died. Cersei Lannister, Queen Regent, dreamt of a dagger kissing her spine, so cold it burned. She woke amid tangled Myrish sheets, her pulse drumming. Dawn's first light touched her chamber high in the Red Keep. When the knock sounded, 3 quick, 1 long, she knew before the words. Years of listening at doors told her which sound followed tragedy. Maester Pycelle, stooped and trembling, spoke through cracked lips, "Your Grace, the Lord Hand." In his pavilion, the king's guard found, he broke like thin ice. Tears glittered in his beard. "He is dead." The world shifted, as though castle stone turned to sand. Yet instead of falling, Cersei felt something within her rise. An old, familiar flame, as much relief as grief, as much thrill as terror. Tywin's shadow had towered over her all her life. Now the sun shone where that shadow fell. She gathered the tatters of her silk robe around her bosom, masking tremor as shiver. "Send Ser Osmond. Wake the king. Seal the gates. No bird flies until I command." Pycelle bowed and tottered away. Cersei turned to the mirror of polished obsidian Tyrion had gifted. In its black depths, torchlight painted her hair the color of bonfire. Though tears pooled unshed, her mouth curved, soft and secret. Tyrion Lannister stood barefoot on soft grass, staring at a pavilion that no longer seemed a tent but a mausoleum draped in crimson. 2 gold cloaks barred his way until they recognized him. Inside, Tywin lay across a war table, head resting upon folded arms as though asleep after long labor. But his skin had paled to wax, lips violet, eyes half-lidded. The sense of power that had clung to him, indomitable, unquestioned, had fled like heat from cooling iron. Yet there was no wound, no mark beyond a faint bruise where throat met collarbone. Tyrion leaned close, something colder than winter seeped from the body. He shivered. Ser Kevin knelt at the far end, hands clasped about a prayer, jaw clenched. Jaime arrived moments later, face unreadable, only the way his golden hand tightened around imaginary hilt betrayed grief. They spoke few words. There were none. Poison? Jaime asked. No trace, said Maester Franken, fetched from the rear. No froth, no swelling, no discoloration but that of blood stilled. His heart simply ceased. And the guard? Tyrion asked. Surely someone. Both slain, Kevin whispered, voice ragged. Their throats wide as butcher's pigs. Yet no one entered, no horse rode away. It is as though death walked through shadow itself. Tyrion rubbed the bridge of his nose. Death seldom walks alone. It leaves prints, fear, rumor, confusion. We must think, uncle. We must think very sharply indeed. Word carried to Dragonstone on wings faster than raven or sail. Melisandre knelt upon black sand, waves lapping at her toes. The night air tasted of salt and soot, yet she inhaled like one savoring rare scent. It is done, Stannis said behind her. He kept distance as though she were a conflagration bound in skin. The lion's heart has stopped. His death is a candle, she replied, voice soft. Its smoke will coil through every hall of power. King's Landing will stifle in its haze. Stannis said nothing for a time. Wind rattled the bones of dead trees perched upon cliffs. In the distance, Dragamont loomed, fire-lit vents pulsing like a giant's breath. Was it my face? He asked, each word dragged forth like sword from scabbard. Melisandre turned. Your shadow, my king, wears what face you grant it. It is justice made manifest. Stannis looked to the sea. Let us pray the realm agrees. The realm did not. When ravens black as sorrow bore news across Westeros, some wept, some rejoiced, some whispered curses on Baratheon lips. Lord Randall Tarly commanded Mace Tyrell's armies on the Rose Road and saw victory turn to mire without Tywin's hand-guiding strategy. At Riverrun, Edmure Tully raised toasts to the lion's fall, while Blackfish Brynden cautioned that a cornered beast still kills. Roose Bolton at the twins weighed letters bearing dry seals of wax and words of gold and found them suddenly less heavy. In the Vale, Peter Baelish smiled into a silver mirror, counting outcomes. At Sunspear, Prince Doran tasted bitter oranges and let the wind stir old hopes. In Bravos, across a tide flecked with froth, a girl with many names learned of a lion brought down by no blade men could see, and she added the name of Stannis to her prayer without knowing why. King's Landing stank of heat and fear. Bells tolled for the Lord Hand, their mournful reverberations trembling the high September stones. Cersei rode in an open palanquin draped with black silk, Joffrey beside her, face fixed in a spectacle of grief learned from mirrors. Mourning crowds parted like wheat before scythes, kneeling, weeping, jeering in equal measure. That night the small council gathered. Seats once squeezed tight around polished cedar now gaped empty. Cersei took the hand's chair though she named herself only regent. Varys folded his hands. Pycelle sniffed and dabbed eyes. Tyrion arrived last, limping on still healing foot, a scroll tucked beneath his arm. The city cannot think us powerless, Cersei began. The city already does, Tyrion observed. Wildfire drowned Stannis last year, or so we told them. Now our father is dead, and some phantom did what fleet, sword, and siege failed. The small folk will talk. Talking treason earns a tongue removed, Joffrey offered, picking at a gem on his cuff. Tyrion poured himself wine. Remove all their tongues and none would cheer your coronation, your grace. We need answers. We need proof of a culprit. And for that we need a faith, said Cersei. Tyrion paused mid-sip. Come again. Faith, she repeated. The faith of the Seven stands above suspicion. The High Septon will denounce this witchcraft. We will call upon the warrior's justice, the mother's mercy. The people trust in prayer. And if the gods remain silent? Her gaze glittered. Then we speak for them. Across the Blackwater, at Storm's End now held by Stannis's garrison, Davos Seaworth knelt before his king in the castle Godwood, though thorny brush and storm-snapped boughs made it a poor echo of more ancient groves. Torches hissed, thrown about in iron sconces. I have served you long and true, Grace, Davos said, voice rough as rope. But this I cannot stomach. I watched the Red Woman birth a shadow that slew your own brother. Now another kills Tywin Lannister while he slept. Is this justice or murder? Stannis' eyes hardened. Justice is the law set right, Ser Davos. Murder is a man's hand raised for coin or despite. Tywin rode to save a false king, burned good men alive, butchered his liege lord's son at the Red Wedding. If the gods will not punish such crimes, we must. The gods will judge us all, Davos whispered. Melisandre stepped from gloom. Davos had not heard her approach. The Lord of Light's judgment is swift for those who deny him. Yet his servants must sometimes wield the flame. The realm needs king and law, not myth and sorcery, Davos pressed. What are the men who will follow you only if you fight with honor? What are the Northmen counting on your banners to avenge the Red Wedding, the River Lords longing for one righteous sword? Will they trust a king who kills unseen in night? Stannis ran a hand across his scalp. They will trust results. When lions scatter and bastards burn, they will see justice. He turned away, voice now softer. But I will have no more shadows, Melisandre. 2 lives taken thus weigh on me. Let the next be struck in daylight from a sword I can feel. The Red Woman bowed. As you command. Yet know this, darkness does not sleep. Lurking beyond the wall, another king stirs, one who would freeze the world entire. Shadows are but candles beside his night. To face him, we need every flame. Davos started, startled. Another king? You speak of the wildling manse? I speak of ice-given mind, she answered. The king of winter, the heart of night, the one ancient as the long night's first howl. Her eyes glowed brighter. Only the Lord's chosen can stand against him. Stannis' jaw clenched anew. The path before him seemed to lengthen until its end was lost in blizzard and shadow alike. Then we march, he said at last. But first, King's Landing. Beyond the city gates, chaos rooted where Tywin's discipline once reigned. Goldcloaks argued in streets with Tyrell men-at-arms bristling beneath green and gold roses. Bread grew thin, coin grew lighter. Rumors spread faster than plague, that Renly's ghost strode the halls, that dragons hatched beneath the keep, that the king bled nightly from unhealed wound. In Flea Bottom, men swore seeing a stag-shaped darkness climb the Red Keep's walls. Women whispered prayers to the stranger. Late one muggy night, Tyrion climbed the Tower of the Hand, now locked and dusted since his father's march months past. Cobwebs coated shelves heavy with histories of Casterly rock, the faint smell of lead ink lingering. He found the hidden door behind the hearth where passages snaked through the castle like veins. With a torch and dagger, he walked narrow stairs deeper than dungeons, searching for any sign of unnatural passage. He found only rats and silence. Yet somewhere far below, where the tunnels met the Doomstone foundation built by Maegor, Tyrion felt a draft neither warm nor cold but empty, as if air displaced by something vast no longer present. He shivered, turned back. Above, a naked blade awaited Bronn, lounging at the landing, grin crooked. "Find your monster?" he asked. Tyrion wiped sweat from his brow. "Found emptiness. Sometimes the deadliest thing." Bronn sheathed steel. "Emptiness don't bleed. Emptiness don't pay either." "Nor does a dead hand," Tyrion agreed, "but a grateful queen might." Bronn raised a brow. "Is she grateful?" "Not yet." Tyrion blew out his torch. "But she will be. I mean to bring her something no one else can. Truth." Truth proved slippery as eels in Blackwater Bay. By the time Tyrion traced whispers of a red priestess in Stannis' service, she had vanished from every spy's report. Ships sailing beneath Stannis' flag slipped from harbors like wraiths. Lords bannermen once sworn to Renly now debated whether their oaths might be renewed to the older Baratheon brother. After all, the roses smelled sweeter of late. The phrase, sensing shifting winds, sent envoys south carrying pale gifts and paler apologies. Atop the Iron Throne, Joffrey lost taste for statecraft, spending hours shooting crossbow bolts into straw men painted Baratheon crimson. Cersei watched, frowning deeper each day. Why, while Marjorie Tyrell smiled gentle as yet counted each arrow. One dawn 8 days after Tywin's funeral, thunderclap boomed along the Mudgate. Trumpets wailed. Riders arrived from the east, Varys hailed them first, envoys of the Golden Company, though many bore dark sigils of Storm's End as well. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man cloaked in black and gold, knelt before the Iron Throne, unhelmed to reveal red hair shorn to stubble. "I am Sir Richard Horpe," he proclaimed. "I come bearing word from Storm's End and from Dragonstone alike. Stannis Baratheon bids the false king surrender. The rightful lord of the Seven Kingdoms marches, justice in his vanguard, flame in his hand." Chaos flowered anew across the throne room. When the babble quieted, Tyrion stepped forward between high columns. "And what proof of right does Lord Stannis wield?" he asked. "This," said Horp, and drew a parchment bearing the broken wax of the Iron Throne itself. A warrant signed months prior by Robert Baratheon naming Stannis heir should both sons perish. Another page bore signatures of lords slain at the Trident swearing oaths. And beneath, a crimson seal shaped like a fiery heart enclosed a stag. Tyrion took it, weighed wax with thumb. "A seal is only wax," he said softly. "Yet wax may burn," Horp answered, eyes bright with warning. At River Run, word arrived of Lord Tywin's death like thunder across still water. Robb Stark, king in the north, though crown now more weight than honor, arode through camp, silent in thought. The Lion's Fall opened paths he'd thought forever closed. But watchers on ramparts spied banners of House Frey arriving from the west, timing too soon to be chance. Catelyn Stark received them beside her son. Lord Walder's emissary, sallow-faced Ser Ryman, offered renewed vows of friendship, the hand of Rosalind Frey to Edmure, and 100 mounted men for the northern cause. Robb listened stone-faced. "And your lord father asks what price," he said. "Only peace," Ser Ryman lied. But the letter he carried told truths. Tywin dead, Frey treachery laid bare to all, Bolton ambition unshielded. Without the Lion's gold, Roose would seek new coin. And without Tywin's command, Walder smelled his own skin roasting. The Red Wedding, once inevitable, wavered. Catelyn's eyes brimmed with cautious hope. In the night she knelt before the statue of the maiden. "If the gods are just," she whispered, "let Tywin's death be more than vengeance. Let it save my son." Far north, at Castle Black, Jon Snow stood upon the wall, listening to wind that carried faint roars of distant things. Ravens had flown since dawn, their wings beat messages of turmoil far to the south. Yet Jon's eyes looked north, to white that ate horizon. Maester Aemon's voice, thin as parchment, spoke beside him. "The world divides, Jon," he said. "When great fires kindle in one quarter, cold rises in another." Jon pulled his cloak tighter. "You speak of Stannis' Red Woman. I speak of balance. Light and shadow dance eternal. Kill one lion, another predator feeds." Aemon's blind eyes turned skyward. "But when fire intensifies, ice creeps deeper, hungry to swallow flame. Below, black brothers trained with practice swords. Above, a cold sun drifted behind rosary clouds." Jon felt both warmth and chill, as though torn between hearth and blizzard. "Pray your Stannis is more fire than smoke," Aemon murmured. "I pray he comes at all," Jon answered. "For winter gathers." Stannis came. Banners black and gold, crowned stag within fiery heart, marched from Storm's End up the King's Road. Behind them strode Sel's words from Essos, sworn knights once bound to Renly, spearwives from the marches, and a column of Braavosi-free traders whose pockets grew heavier each league. Above, red priests carried torches that somehow burned scarlet even at noon. Reports reached King's Landing daily, each more wild. Stannis' army swelled by small folk who claimed visions of a burning stag guiding them. Fires broke out in holdfasts where septons denounced the Lord of Light, charred corpses of idols dotted crossroads. Some said Melisandre herself walked barefoot through coals unscathed, foretelling dusk and dawn. Yet within that multitude, Davos Seaworth led a smaller band, Northmen deserters, river lords freed at Stone Mill, children of the Fingers bound only by loyalty. He kept them separate, drilling order where zealotry threatened chaos, teaching them to wield sword and shield, not flame and word. And each night, beneath a moon seeming ever redder, he prayed to the warrior and the mother for a battle fought in daylight. In the Red Keep's highest tower, Cersei watched the King's Road shimmer dusty gold. Her fingers traced the rim of a goblet, nails little knives. "They say the stag's army reaches Duskendale," she murmured. Pycelle shifted weight. "Yes, your grace." Yet scouts claim numbers less than first feared. Perhaps only 15,000. 15,000 zealots possessed by fire, she said. 15,000 is enough to storm a city reeling. Lord Mace Tyrell marches from Highgarden, Pycelle offered. With 50,000 swords at least? Cersei smiled thinly. Mace is a windbag inflated by victories won with lion's blood. He will make pageantry, not war. And Stannis will strike before the roses bloom. She turned from the window, walked toward the council table where her father once Saturday summoned Grand Maester Balabar from the Citadel. The city needs more leeches than ravens. She drew a deep breath. "And fetch Qyburn from the black cells. I want whispers, not prayers." Her green eyes glinted with something neither grief nor fear, something hungry. In them, Pycelle saw a lioness cornered, ready to rend flesh from bone, her father's caution burned from memory by sudden power. Night before first frost of autumn, Stannis encamped outside Duskendale's ruined walls. Fires dotted hillsides, though Melisandre forbade torches in the central meadow where she prepared a ritual unseen by most. Davos tried to approach, her acolytes barred him. Inside a ring of weirwood ash, she drew lines of powdered ruby and obsidian, forming a sigil of twisting flames around a single iron brazier. Into its coals she tossed parchments bearing names: Tyrell, Fry, Bolton, Baratheon Fallborn, and one last blank. The flames reddened. She breathed a prayer in Ass high tongue. A gust rose, though valley winds slept. Sparks splayed skyward, shaping antlers, talons, crowned skulls. Those who watched swore the air rippled with heat though the night lay cool. Melisandre's voice climbed until it was both whisper and thunder, promising that darkness would break upon dawn like waves on black shore, that the righteous sword would pierce the heart of night. Davos, at the edge, felt his knees quake. He saw shadows dancing within flame, shapes of men running, of cities blazing, of white walkers striding fields of red snow. He stepped backward, breathing hard, until grass cooled his boots once more. Come dawn, Stannis addressed his captains. We march within the week. The lion cub quivers behind stone and gold. King's Landing will open or burn. His eyes swept them like whetted steel. Yet hold fast so long our path must see justice. Any who kneel will be spared, their steps untouched. Any who raise blade shall face it. And no more shall the flames of the red god judge them in place of men. Melisandre's head turned, but she spoke no protest. At King's Landing's gates crowds swelled, drawn by rumor. The stag's host burned septs, crucified septons, drank children's blood. Gold cloaks beat back panic, coin changed hands for passage on riverboats. The streets smelled of sweat, dung, and dread. Tyrion met Varys in the tunnels beneath the guild hall of the alchemists. Candlelight glimmered on green glass flasks. Wildfire, Tyrion mused. Father forbade its use after Blackwater's lesson. Yet he no longer sits the council. No one sits the council, Varys said sadly. They pace. Then let them burn in their pacing. Tyrion hefted a small flask. Liquid shimmered, hungry. But sometimes fire answers fire. He set it down, gazed distant. Still, I crave truth more than victory. Who killed Tywin? Varys opened his hands. What is truth but a story agreed upon? A shadow may kill a man, but the tale of that shadow kills armies. Already Tyrell men whisper of devils in red cloaks. Fear can win wars more surely than swords. Tyrion smiled crookedly. Then let us spin our own shadows. 5 leagues south of King's Landing, scouts from both armies clashed beneath a withered oak. Arrows flew like swallows. Of the 6 men Stannis sent, 1 returned battered, bearing word. Tyrell vanguard sighted on the Rose Road, advancing faster than anticipated. Mace Tyrell meant to crush Stannis between hammer and anvil, with the city as anvil and his cavalry the hammer. Davos pressed for retreat to Storm's End. Stannis refused. Melisandre suggested a ritual of dawn fire to scatter the roses. Davos argued men followed light but feared flame. The council split until dawn. In the hush before sunrise, Stannis summoned Davos alone. I have trusted you when others called you smuggler, he said. Trust me now. I will break Tyrell pride in open field. Take the fleet round to the Blackwater. Seal the river mouth. Cut the city from grain and hope. Davos bowed, though fear coiled heavier in his chest than any chain. And you, Grace. I will meet them. Stannis placed hand on his sword. Melisandre will stay at my side, but no shadow will ride ahead. If the gods favor me, we will win by honor. Davos set sail that night, heart hammering as oars cut water black as pitch. The field of Ashford North, beneath hills where orchards once bloomed, bore witness 3 days later. Tyrell host unfurled banners green as new leaf, gold roses aplenty, trumpets bright. Stannis' lines stood fewer, numbers masked by dust of stirred earth. Overhead, clouds banked heavy, pregnant with summer storm, though season waned. The battle began as spear met shield. Tyrell knights thundered with lances couched, rose rippling like wheat bent by wind. Stannis' center held, then bent, then sagged under sheer mass. Yet Melisandre had arranged pits filled with oil and pitch, fire arrows loosed from flank-ignited trenches, carving ragged gaps where horses screamed. Smoke rose dense as night, blotting sun. Within that murk, figures moved, some men of flesh, others more ephemeral. Sellswords claimed later they saw shapes birthed of fire itself, stags and serpents, lions that roared without sound. Whether vision or delirium, the Tyrell charge faltered. Panic rippled front to rear. On a low rise, Mace Tyrell swung mace gold and jade, rallying banner men. Stannis spurred Destria forward, sword bright against gloom. They met amid swirling ash. Words lost in clangor, but all saw Mace's mace glance from Stannis's helm, sparks flying. Stannis's counter-carved bright arc, Mace's shield split, arm shattered beneath. The fattest knight fell, crown of roses trampled. Horn blasts followed. Tyrell lines wavered, then broke. Westering sun found a field strewn with broken lances, trampled banners, corpses clothed in petals and smoke. Melisandre stood amid ruin, eyes alight with something like triumph, though a thin line of ash blackened her cheeks like war paint. Stannis's armor, dented, scorched, showed blood of foes, but none of his own. Victory tasted of iron and ash. But to the north, dust rose anew. Scouts brought word Lannister forces from Harrenhal advanced in haste, commanded by Ser Gregor Clegane, remnant of Lion's Fang still eager for gore. War, it seemed, would not relent. In King's Landing, bells tolled again, this time not for mourning but alarm. Smoke visible from ramparts told of burning fields to south, harvest lost. Prices soared. Riots flared in Flea Bottom. Qyburn's black cells filled with whisperers whose tongues no longer wagged. Cersei placed sword in Joffrey's hands, bidding him inspire realm. The boy waved glittering steel at balcony crowds, shouting doom upon the false King Stannis. But his voice cracked, laughter rose amid jeers. Cersei's face hardened like newly fired clay. That night she met Jaime in her solar. Father is dead. Our enemies press on every side. We need allies who fear us as they do dragons. Jaime's brows furrowed. No dragons remain. Her smile curved feral. There are other beasts we might unleash. She produced a silk-covered bundle. Within gleamed a blade of pale steel, Valyrian swirls dark as smoke. The lion's tooth still bites. Jaime shook his head. Steel cannot fight fire and shadow both. Then we must forge shadows of our own, she replied, eyes shining with dangerous light. Far afield, Arya Stark rode with the hound toward the Riverland's smoking ruins. Rumors of Tywin's death painted Clegane's grin broader each tavern. Lannister lions losing their roar, he said, wiping ale from beard. Might even piss themselves next. Yet Arya felt only confusion, her list of names crumbling as fate devoured some for her, leaving others still flesh. She whispered Tywin's name that night, though he was dead, and wondered if shadows listened. Jon Snow met Samwell Tarly at evening meal, thin stew, stale bread. Ravens from the south bring madness, Sam said quietly. Lannisters in turmoil, Tyrell's broken by Stannis, Frey's sued for peace. Yet Maester Aemon says winter cares nothing for southern wars. Jon nodded. He'd read the messages, wildlings massing, white-sided. The wall felt too thin. A horn blast echoed from East Watch. A rider galloped through blowing snow, the king beyond the wall marched for the Shadow Tower. Night's Watch must choose, stand alone, or call south for aid. Jon's mind flashed to Stannis's Red Woman to talk of light versus darkness. He clenched his cloak against cold. At Dragonstone, Melisandre stood before the stone likenesses of dragons curled, round forge vents. Moonlight silvered her skin. She held a single candle in both palms, its flame burned black-red center. Long night comes sooner now, she whispered to the shadows. The Lord's chosen has struck 2 blows, yet each wakens greater darkness. We must forge the king's sword of flame. Yet where lies the iron for such forging? Wind answered, carrying faint echoes of gulls. Her gaze drifted westward toward hills where old Valyrian stone wept steam. In ancient fire, she said, and in royal blood. Royal blood slept uneasy in King's Landing. Joffrey tossed on silken bed, dreams plagued by antlered phantoms. When he woke, a figure sat by window small, cloaked. As he opened mouth to cry out, the figure raised finger to lips. Lantern revealed Tyrion. Go back to sleep, your grace, he said softly. I'm here to save you. Joffrey blinked. From what? Mother says. Mother lies to protect you. Shadows grow longer. You must leave the city. Tyrion unfolded a map. A ship waits. Sail to Casterly Rock. There the sea walls stand high. In time, when storms pass, you may return. Joffrey's eyes swam between fear and suspicion. And mother? She will join later. First, you must live. Tyrion's smile was sad. A dead king helps no one. Thunder cracked outside though sky was clear. Joffrey flinched. In that moment Tyrion saw a boy, not a tyrant. I'll go, Joffrey whispered. But you come too. I cannot, Tyrion said. I must remain where shadows gather. Someone must light a torch. The torch lit sooner than planned. At dawn, ships bearing stag and fiery heart sails glided into Blackwater Bay, the chain lowered by men loyal to Davos. A white banner flew beside the heart, terms of parley. On city walls, confusion birthed argument. Davos himself rode a skiff to the mud gate, bearing letters sealed by Stannis' signet. Cersei met him in the throne room, armored in gold scale. The letter offered surrender terms, Joffrey to step aside as usurper, small council to stand trial, common folk spared. Evidence of Cersei's incest withheld in exchange for peace. And one line more, the Queen Regent may take the black for her crimes and live. When she'd finished, Cersei's laugh echoed off high stones. He shows mercy, she scoffed. Mercy is wasted on lions. She tore the letter. Tell your king the city will burn before I yield. Davos bowed, but his voice carried steel. Only ashes remained for those who choose fire. Outside, clouds blackened. Thunder rolled across bay though no storm appeared. Smoke from Tyrell pyres drifted north, staining sky. Within that murk, the shadow of a stag seemed to gallop upon clouds, antlers rimmed in flame. In the streets below, small folk shrank back, whispering names, Lightbringer, Lord of Flame, Judgment. Some fled to septs, others knelt in alleys, pleading red priests for salvation. The ground itself felt warmer beneath bare feet. From atop the gate of the gods, Tyrion watched Davos depart. Beside him, Bronn spat. City's doomed, that much seems sure. Perhaps, Tyrion said. But I've learned shadows are cast by light. Find the light, snuff it, and shadow dies. He rubbed thumb across scarred cheek. But what candle burns red? On Dragonstone, Melisandre's candle extinguished without breath. Her eyes flew open. The dwarf seeks flame, she murmured. If he finds it, night wins. She strode from chamber to courtyard where Stannis paced, restless. The hour comes, she told him. You must wield the sword of heroes. He looked up. Sword? Lightbringer is legend. We make legends, she answered. Trust in fire. Grasp its hilt. She pointed to the old Valyrian forge. There, workers had stoked furnaces day and night, melting steel into crucibles. Now molten metal glowed white-hot. Melisandre handed Stannis a blade blank, still red from smithy. Plunge it, she commanded, into my heart. Stannis recoiled. This is madness. Only royal blood can wake true flame. Her voice trembled yet held certainty. I am fire given flesh. My life kindles the blade, your justice wields it. Davos, newly arrived, stepped between. No, he cried. Grace, this is butchery, not forging. Melisandre looked past him, eyes bound to Stannis. Choose, she whispered. Stannis's hand shook. There must be another way. Not if you wish to save the realm. At that moment, thunder cracked overhead. Lightning split cloud, white core rimmed red. Rain began, hot as bathwater though sky cooled. It hissed on hot iron, steam rising. Stannis dropped the blank. Steel clanged, sparks died. Life is not fuel, he said softly. No more blood for shadows. Melisandre closed her eyes. Then daylight must suffice. Within King's Landing, torchlight flickered along Blackwater parapets. Tyrion met Grand Maester Pycelle and Ser Meryn Trant beneath a full moon painted crimson by drifting smoke. Tell the Queen Regent, he said, that wildfire caches remain. We can flood the river, the city streets, turn night to burning day. A flame may spread beyond control. Pycelle shook. Wildfire obeys no master once loosed. Nor does the Red Woman's flame, Tyrion countered. If we must burn, better by our own hand. Madness, Trant muttered. Madness keeps us alive. Tyrion limped away, mind racing, counting barrels, tunnels, escape routes. Somewhere below, in the dark, he imagined green flames swirling, eager. The next dawn, Stannis' army arrayed before the city walls, ranks bristling with spears, trebuchets poised. Trumpets blared. A single rider advanced beneath white banner, Ser Richard Horp once more. Gates opened, Tyrion rode out on scarred stallion, armor fitted clumsily to his frame. They met at arrow's flight distance, each flanked by two riders. Dust eddied, tasting of ash. Parley, Horp called. Parley, Tyrion answered. Horp produced a scroll. Terms is offered. Accept and city spared. Tyrion laughed. Your king claims righteousness yet offers mercy grudgingly. But I present another offer, withdraw and we deliver Cersei's head before fortnight. Horp's eyes narrowed. You speak treason against own blood? I speak survival. Tyrion leaned forward. A lion may bite, yet cornered it devours itself. Stannis will find a city half-burnt, bereft of allies. Better he rule ashes? Horp's answer was steel glint. Then ashes you'll have. He wheeled horse. Tyrion turned, heart thunder. Plans within plans whirled, wildfire flows, sewer tunnels, secret passages. Shadow or light, something would break this day. Sun reached zenith. Trebuchets launched first stones. They smashed against red brick, showering shards. Crossbow bolts hailed from battlements. Drums thundered. The siege began. Melisandre walked between soldiers, arms raised, singing in high Valyrian. Her voice cut through clash and cry. Flame ignited arrow tips without tinder. Men roared praise, hearts kindled. But wind shifted, along ramparts green smoke rose, wildfire, leaking from pipes Tyrion ordered vented. Flames hissed, licking sky. A single spark engulfed a tower in emerald inferno, screams echoing. Stannis' front lines staggered at sight of sorcery not theirs. Melisandre smiled, thinking it mere candle to her bonfire. She raised arms higher. Red and green flames danced across sky, twining like serpents. Then the shadow came again. Not from her womb, but from city's very walls, cast by wildfire's sickly glow, it stretched towering, shape half lion, half stag, horns aflame green. It loomed over both armies, dwarfing siege towers, silent as tomb. Men fell to knees. Horses reared, tearing reins. Even Melisandre staggered, eyes wide. No, she breathed. This is not mine. In its chest burned a heart of jade flame. Its roar, soundless yet felt in bones, shivered air. It raised claw of shadow and struck the wall. Stone banished to dust. Tyrion, atop parapet, saw it and knew fear deeper than Blackwater's pitch. For a moment he thought the shadow his creation, born of wildfire and desperation. But its eyes were red, not green. It was older, deeper. Arrows passed through. Fire seared its outline but did not banish. Strode once more, walls crumbling. Stannis saw and spurred horse. Across field he galloped, sword aloft, shouting orders drowned. Davos, at riverbank, ordered boats ashore, archers loose. Flames met water, hiss, steam. Melisandre knelt, eyes closed. She reached within, seeking fire's heart. Her lips moved, sparks leapt from her skin. But the shadow's heart burned not of her god. It beat emerald born of alchemist's art and Lannister gold. She opened eyes, understanding too late. In that instant, Tyrion thrust blade into valve, releasing flood of wildfire across moat. Green tide roared, engulfing base of wall, swallowing the shadow's lower half. It convulsed, form flickering like torn banner. Melisandre's song rose. Red flames leapt from trebuchet pitch pits, meeting green crescendo. Colors clashed, merging into white-hot void. A soundless explosion bloomed, light brighter than noon. Men were lifted from ramparts like leaves. Dust, stone, shadow, flame, everything within 100 yards vanished. When brilliance faded, a crater yawned where gate once stood, smoke rising black and gray. Silence fell but for crackle of dying fire. Tyrion lay amid rubble, ears ringing, mouth tasting copper. He blinked through dust. Across crater, Stannis climbed from shattered earth, armor scorched, one antler torn from helm. Their eyes met over ruin. Between them, amid ash, the shadow fled, drawn into pit that swallowed both colors and gods. What remained was man. Stannis raised sword, its edge dull now flame extinct. Tyrion pushed up on bruised knees, hands empty but will unbroken. Voices rose, first scattered, then surging. Men of both sides saw their leaders stand alone amid ruin. The clamor of army regained breath. Stannis lowered sword. Enough blood, he called, voice carrying. The true enemy is risen in north, not here. Join me or see realm fall. Tyrion wiped blood from eye. You destroyed the gate and half your men to prove righteousness, he shouted back. Yet here I stand and here stands the city. If you would save realm, spare its people first. Wind stirred smoke. Stannis' jaw tightened. From rear ranks banners stirred. Tyrell remnants, their lord crippled, wavered. Fry riders, Bolton spears, men grown weary of war, they looked upon crater, upon leaders scorched but breathing, and upon sky darkening though suns still high. Storm clouds towered to north, thunder rumbling. Davos arrived, pulling reins. Grace, our ship's control bay. The city starves. Yet winter comes. Decide. Stannis closed eyes a moment, then sheathed sword. Parley at dusk, he called. No shadows, no fire. Only words. Tyrion, astonished, nodded. Dusk. Banners lowered. Horns quieted. Men tended wounded, hauled stone, doused embers. Between armies, white banners stood. Melisandre watched from ridge, eyes narrowed. Flames still licked her robes though no fire touched them. She felt light fade within, the Lord's favor dimmed. Yet she sensed other power stirring, deep beneath, older than her god. A cold wind swept across scorched field, stirring ashes like snow. She whispered, the long night. And far to north, beyond wall, White Walkers marched. Night fell upon uneasy truce. Candle glow flickered across Master's tent pitched between lines. Stannis, Tyrion, Davos, Varys, Ser Kevan, Pycelle, few enough to share table. Wine poured thick and dark. Stannis spoke first. We bleed realm for crowns while others grow in darkness. The wall writes of dead walking. I will march north once throne secured, but I need city's grain, its forges, its ships. Tyrion sipped wine. You need the city, and the city needs peace. Crown Joffrey abdicates, realm averts war. But smallfolk fear your fires. Melisandre must remain outside walls. Stannis glanced at Davos, then nodded slowly. The Red Woman's work is done here. Beyond canvas, Melisandre felt decision like blade thrust. She smiled, turning face to stars invisible through smoke. Done? No. Begun. Inside, Varys unrolled parchment, lineage charts revised. The throne may pass to Tommen under neutral council until majority, he suggested. Stannis slapped map. Bastards both, seed of incest. Crown must rest on rightful head. Ser Kevin cleared throat. And who judges right? The dead hand named you heir only if Robert's sons die. Tension thickened until candle wavered. Tyrion set goblet down. Perhaps realm chooses. Assemble great council. Lords paramount cast votes. Meanwhile, truce stands, we march north. Stannis' eyes narrowed. Davos whispered, grace, victory won by sword alone rots quick. Win hearts and winter may be weathered. Stannis exhaled. Great council. I accept, provided council convenes within Moon's turn and funds Wall's defense now. Agreement came with heavy silence. Yet in that hush, Tyrion felt hope flicker. Within the city, Cersei raged at news. He treats with traitors, she screamed, hurling goblet. My son will not abdicate. Jaime tried calm. Tommen yet lives? Tommen is a babe. They will take him hostage. She paced, skirts whipping. I will not be set aside by dwarf and usurper. She turned to Qyburn. Begin the work. He bowed. As you command, your grace. On the north road, Melisandre rode alone, back toward Dragonstone. Flames flickered in her eyes though torches absent. She hummed ancient lullaby from Ass High. At a crook in road she dismounted, knelt on damp earth. Her fingers traced sign of burning heart. Light fades, she whispered, but shadow lengthens. She stretched hand toward midnight sky. Stars blinked like embers. Between them spread velvety darkness, night eternal. Somewhere within, ice moved. She closed eyes, feeling its chill upon her soul. The prince that was promised stands at crossroads. I will guide him. When she opened eyes again, they glowed not red but pale blue a moment before flame returned. She mounted, urging horse onward, song upon her lips. Thus the stage set, a lion's roar silenced by shadow birthed of flame, a stag crowned in blood and ash, a city sparing itself by bargain of enemies, a red woman walking paths between light and night, and in the frozen north, white death marching. The Game of Thrones had shed its first skin. What came would be darker still, where swords met shadow and ice, where kings knelt not to crowns but to survival itself, where every fire, no matter how bright, cast a longer, colder shadow. And as winter's true heart stirred, the realm held breath, teetering between dawn and endless night. Moonless black veiled the sky above the makeshift camp that sprawled beyond the broken walls of King's Landing, yet the air pulsed with a hush so deep it seemed every throat in the city and every soldier's trench held the same breath. Fires guttered low in iron braziers fashioned from shattered trebuchet frames. The glow revealed more ash than embers, as though even the flames tired of this war and wished for dark, uneasy sleep. Stannis Baratheon stood in the glow of one such brazier, the glow sharpening every edge of his spare, unforgiving face. Davos Seaworth waited astride behind him, mindful that the king's rare quiet was not to be broken by lesser men or by any man at all until the moment came for truth to be spoken and accepted like medicine. In place of Melisandre tonight, only her memory attended. The faintest scent of cinnamon and cloves still clung to Stannis' blackened mail. She had not yet quit the army's shadow, Davos knew, but her absence at the parley tent had set new rules to their game. A man might bargain with men, yet the unseen hand that spun the fire priestess's web remained beyond reach, haunting every tentative oath. From the city tortured bells began to toll again, deeper now than any mere alarm, the cadence of loss-given voice. Tyrion Lannister had ordered the bells rung for the dead pulled from rubble, small folk and gold cloaks alike crushed in the crater where wildfire and red fire had tried to devour each other and instead consumed stone and flesh. The bells rang on, and each dull peal rolled across the blasted field until it brushed the mailed knees of waiting hosts like a plea. Stannis did not flinch at that sound. He watched the mote of jagged ruin glow as dawn insinuated itself at the far horizon. Pale rose tinted the underbellies of clouds still bruised by last eve's fury, and that meager warmth flared on every dent in his breastplate. He was a cold statue until a sentry's boots scuffed gravel behind him. Southspur signal, Grace, the lad said, voice cracking with weariness. Tyrell outriders retreat another league. Lord Tarley's banner seen falling back for supply. No host approaches from rear. Stannis dismissed him with a twitch of one gauntlet hand. Davos exhaled, a sailor's salty breath turned to mist and moved to his liege's shoulder. Every road we feared clogged with roses is clear, Davos ventured. The gods favor us. Stannis kept his eyes on the jagged skyline. The gods favor no man, Onion Knight. They wait to weigh each soul at the end of breath. Favor is the coin of men. And whose coin buys peace today? Davos asked softly. None yet, said the king, and at last he turned. Dawn startled in his eyes, but the fire promised there outshone the meager sun. The dwarf will bring the queen regent before noon. Or bring her head. We shall see whether Lannister gold still buys the city's love. A shiver crept Davos's spine, for he knew Stannis's patience reached further than his mercy. Across the scorched no-man's land, Tyrion Lannister studied maps littered across a table that had once served the master of ships. He swept inkpots and compass aside. Outside his command pavilion the chorus of bells refused to die, a dirge grown monotonous yet unavoidable as heartbeats. Podrick Payne kept the tent flap, helm too large atop his earnest head, watching the dance of ravens arriving with new reports. The parley hour approaches, my lord, Pot said. Shall I fetch the queen? Tyrion's scar twitched. Fetch Qyburn and the queen's sworn shield. I would prefer them both to stand witness. But be ready to run if she refuses the summons. Her mood today sits on a sword edge. Podrick left on quick feet, and Tyrion leaned over the map again. The crater east of the mud gate glared back at him, an ugly, ragged mouth in the city's skin. Somewhere under that yawning pit lay the bones of men who had trusted him. The thought gnawed at him harder than Cersei's accusations, harder than any jest about his size. He straightened when Grand Maester Pycelle shuffled in. The old man's beard trembled with each frail breath. My lord Hand, Pycelle said, sliding back into old habit. The queen refuses escort. She will not be seen to walk under Lannister arms when Baratheon eyes watch. Tyrion smiled thinly. Then let her ride under her own pride, though pride stumbles quicker than legs. Keep the bells ringing, Maester. Some find them unsettling. That is the point, Tyrion said. Let every year recall the cost of war as it listens to the terms of peace. Pycelle worked his jaw but found no answer. He tottered out shaking. Tyrion closed his eyes a moment. In that darkness he heard Varys' silken invitation from the night before. We could flee, little lion. Sail east with our wits intact. Let others gnaw this rotten bone. He had refused. Whether folly or courage he did not yet know. He fought now not for crown or gold but for the slightest chance that tomorrow might hold one breath of hope gentler than today's smoke. When he opened his eyes again, Podrick had returned escorting Ser Marentrant and the pale-robed Qyburn, a physician who smiled too often. Cersei followed last, clad not in morning black nor queenly green but in crimson so deep it drank the light, her crown a wreath of gold thorns tight upon her brow. No litter, she declared. I take a horse. I shall sit tall before the usurper. As you will, Tyrion said, voice mild. But remember, any sign of witchery from Stannis' camp and we retreat at once. The wildfire caches beneath the western towers are primed. One spark ends the siege and all within a league. Cersei's lip curled. You threaten your own blood? Merely stating facts. Stannis is owed the same. She strode past him in a swirl of scarlet silk, Trant pacing like a sullen hound. Tyrion nodded to Pod, who caught up with the queen to hand her reins. Outside the gates, the field chosen for council lay scarred by the day's earlier horror but smoothed by labor through the night. A single trestle table stood at center, no banners fluttering save two white peace pennons thrust earthward at each end. A reassuring symmetry. Stannis approached from his line astride a charger war-scarred yet steady. Davos rode behind him and, to Tyrion's surprise, Ser Richard Horp as well. Tyrion came out on a stout dapple mare, the queen on a taller palfrey of Lannisport stock. Marentrant rode at her left hand. Qyburn chose a mule and seemed amused by the beast's obstinate ears. As the parties halted, each measured the other. No salute, no bow. Far across the silent watches men knelt behind pavises with nocked arrows ready, though orders forbade release while the banner stood. Stannis dismounted first, every motion stiff from dawnless waking. Cersei made him wait, slipping from the saddle with feline grace, chin high. Tyrion touched ground last, boots crunching gritty dust, and crossed to the trestle. There will be no seats, Stannis said without greeting. Then let us lean upon our stubbornness, Tyrion replied. Cersei addressed Davos. You bring the Onion Knight to dine on ashes? She asked. Davos inclined his head. I bring truth where lies have festered, your grace. Ashes feed certain trees. Stannis unrolled a vellum sheet. Read. Tyrion took it. The ink still smelled fresh. Terms resembled those Davos had carried prior, with one grievous change. Any confessing loyalty to children born of Jaime and Cersei's incest would face trial, yet blood penalty would fall not on highborn alone but on each steward, squire, and cook sworn to the false line. Tyrion's jaw set. You punish the many for the crimes of the few? The city knew, Stannis said. The court whispered it at Robert's death. Silence is complicity. Cersei laughed, sharp as glass. Listen to the righteous judge. Have you weighed your own crimes? A brother murdered, a damned shadows blade through his heart, and now wildfire. Stannis' eyes narrowed. My brother chose ambition over loyalty. The blade was justice when mortal arms failed. A convenient word, justice, Tyrion inserted, folding the vellum. Yet we stand on a yard of earth soaked in blood neither of us wished spilled. We can spin tales, or we can forge a peace that may outlast dawn. Cersei's gaze flicked to her brother, but her lips twisted with disdain. Pieces for corpses. A lion does not share a kill with carrion. Stannis lifted one hand. Enough. I will not parley with a serpent cloaked in crimson vanity. You will parley with the realm's rightful queen. The realm's rightful queen is ashes in the crypt of Dragonstone, Stannis said coldly. You are a spider in her stolen silks. Tyrion felt the tension coil taut as a bowstring. He set both hands flat on the table, leaning close. Very well. Then parley with me. Your quarrel sits on a single hinge, the throne. Remove the hinge, the door swings free. He drew a second parchment from his doublet. A great council called at Riverrun within 30 days. All lords paramount will attend. No horns, no torches. They will vote the lineage that shall bear the crown. You, Lord Stannis, may place your claim before them unchallenged by sword, challenged only by precedent and witness. Swear now to abide their verdict, and the city gates open for your aid against the winter threatening us all. Stannis' mouth thinned as though he tasted bile. He looked past Tyrion at the broken gilded towers of the city, towers Robert had called his own, towers that might have been Stannis' brightest dream once. His knuckles whitened above the pommel of a sword that felt heavier every season. I have made my claim, he said at last, tone carved of basalt. But the north, the riverlands, the vale, aye, even Dorne, west of their oaths lies survival. If the lords will bend before truth, I shall bend before them. Yet swear this, should they choose a bastard or a boy born of incest, I march again with fire and sword, and pray God's old and new pity the innocent then. Tyrion inclined his head in grave acceptance. The lords will choose as they must. I can bind only myself. But King's Landing will provision your host against the snows if you hold to truce. Cersei hissed. You trade our larders to the butcher waiting at gate? Better to trade grain now than blood later, he snapped. Your coffers may yet refill. She laughed, dead as winter wind. Gold is plentiful. What I lack is obedience. Her eyes found Qyburn. Show them. The pale man opened a leather satchel and withdrew a jar clear as tear glass. Within floated a gray object that twitched once, twice, a severed hand yet reanimated, its fingers writhing like pale worms. Gasps rippled from the onlookers behind Stannis. Old tricks, Davos? Muttered, glancing at Stannis. But even Tyrion felt his stomach knot. Qyburn tapped the glass. The hand jerked, nails scratching silently at the vessel wall. An arm of Gregor Clegane, Qyburn announced, as if at a fair. Reft from his dying body but still yearning to kill. Death need not still a knight's strength. Imagine an army who cannot die. Stannis' lip curled with disgust. An abomination. Release that sorcery in my sight again and I burn your city to cinders. Cersei's smile grew languid, poisonous. You mistake my purpose. I offer allegiance. The crown will marshal what arts remain to face the White Walkers. We need weapons beyond steel. Join us, Lord Stannis. Wed your burning god to my undying knights and the dawn is ours. A hush blanketed them. Even the wind seemed to hush, listening for the turning of fate. Then Stannis shook his head. I saw wildfire swallow 1,000 souls and leave only howls. I saw my own brother undone by a shadow I commanded yet could not reign. Fire and death are tethers we think we hold until they coil about our throats. He stepped back from the table. I choose the living. Your offer is rot. He turned to Tyrion. Call your council. If they choose rightly, I march north at once with every sword and sack of grain your city can spare. If they choose wrongly, fire will come again, but I shall wield it in the light of day, not in back corridors with jars and whispers. Davos exhaled, relief mingled with dread. Tyrion pressed the folded vellum into his belt. Cersei's mouth opened on a retort, but Tyrion cut across. The bells will cease, he declared. Let their echo carry our pack to every alley. Queen Regent, order your men to escort Lord Stannis's envoys to the granaries. The measures begin this very hour. Her eyes burned like green-lit glass, yet she dipped her chin a fraction. Not obedience, Tyrion noted, strategic delay while she plotted darker recourses. He wondered if any truce could survive the knightly ambitions that flourished inside the Red Keep's labyrinthine veins. The pennons fluttered. The two parties withdrew, each bearing seeds of hope and doom in equal measure. At dusk Tyrion stood upon the tower of the Hand's ruined balcony, staring over the river. Flames-dotted hills where Stannis's camp kindled cookfires fed by the first of the city's grain wagons. He should have felt triumph but tasted only grit. The Great Council, weeks to gather, weeks in which Melisandre and Qyburn both might weave fresh horrors. He rubbed scarred cheek. Hope and doom indeed. Footsteps sounded behind him. Varys approached, robes whispering like secrets. You have postponed the dance, my friend, the eunuch said. Whether the music resumes will depend on players old and new. Old and new. Word from across the sea, Varys murmured. Dragons brood in the east. A Targaryen girl leads freedmen to war. Essos watches. Tyrion stifled a bitter chuckle. More crowns clamoring at board. I had almost grown bored. Varys rested gloved hands upon the parapet. Boredom soon yields to terror. Yet terror may unite what pride sunders. Even lions may kneel before dawn's fire if ice howls at the door. Tyrion gazed north where horizon darkened under storm cloud. Let us pray we meet the ice with more than torches. Miles away in the silent crypts beneath the Red Keep, Qyburn descended steps cut by dragons 3 centuries dead. A single candle limned his path, its flame stooped like a penitent monk. Behind iron-barred doors lay forms shrouded in linen, victims of plague, condemned traitors, or nameless beggars vanished from Flea Bottom. At the far end rested Ser Gregor Clegane's hulking corpse, flesh turned waxen pallor. Qyburn touched the linen. Soon, he whispered. Soon you rise for the queen. In the darkness beyond the candle's breath something stirred, a breath that was not a breath, a rattle of bone or armor Qyburn could not name. He smiled because fear tasted sweet. Across Blackwater Bay Melisandre rode into the cradle of Dragonstone as the moon waxed blood-red. Steam hissed from vents in the basalt ground, and her horse snorted at the sulfur rising. She dismounted before the stone drum, the old fortress's heart, and ascended steps worn by the ghosts of conquerors. Inside the empty chamber she knelt before a pyre laid days earlier. Driftwood stacked with care, sticks of weirwood bark atop blackened coals. She whispered words beyond men's tongues. Flame blossomed from her palm like a blooming rose wrought of fire, searing blue at its core, crimson at its petal's edge. Azor Ahai, she breathed, pressing the flame to the pyre. Come forth in shadow and in light. As the wood roared alight, sparks spiraled toward the vault. In them she saw images. A cripple boy in Winterfell, arms clasped by ravens, a giant dire wolf pacing ice corridors, a man clad all in black kneeling before a crown forged of snow, and at the last a great dragon soaring beneath a bleeding star. Above them all loomed a shape of frost and night, crowned in shard cold horns, eyes bluer than any sea. Terror washed through her, but she drank it like wine. From a pouch she drew a ruby large as a dove's egg and cast it into the fire. The gem cracked and blood-red light drenched the chamber walls. Far above, thunder moaned. The long night comes, she sang. Let Lightbringer be forged anew in beating heart, in burning soul. Let king and realm bow before dawn's herald or be lost to endless shade. Her song rose to a shriek. Flames flared hot white, then collapsed inward, leaving char at the pyre's heart shaped curiously like a blade still half-written in ash. At Winterfell's cold battlements Jon Snow read Maester Aemon's letters, hands trembling despite fur gloves. The old bear's raven croaked never, never, never. Tattered parchment bore seals of many lords, Stannis, Bolton, Stark bannermen cloistered at Moat Cailin. All wrote the same dread, Snow's early and vicious, villages abandoned, white stalking croplands. Sam found him at the archway. More birds from Eastwatch, the steward said. Reports the sea freezes in tongues thicker than ever. Jon looked to the moon caught in thin cloud. We need help. Sam nodded. Stannis's envoy with grain and men may reach us come first blizzard. If the Great Council chooses him. If, Jon echoed. His gaze drifted to the white nothing beyond the wall. In that whiteness shapes moved, he imagined them even when none strode there. But he sensed they were coming. Ghost padded up, muzzle dusted with hoarfrost, and whined, pressing against his master's side. Jon stroked the direwolf's neck. "You feel it too," he whispered. From the haunted forest rose a cry like wind whistling through hollow bones. Men on the gate leaned out, peering into the dark. The cry came again, nearer. Torches flared, uneasy. Crows gathered upon the iced ladders and croaked warnings. Night pressed closer. Far behind King's Landing's shattered wall, Tyrion climbed the September of Baelor's 100 steps to its highest gallery. He looked upon the field now lit by watchfires and saw Stannis' camp ringed in gleams of orange, the city's in pale lantern glow. Between them a narrow stretch lay dark, neutral ground, pregnant with pact and suspicion. A wind swept across and extinguished 3 torches there. He watched, uneasy, then turned back inside. Below, septons prayed over rows of bodies readied for burial. The smell of incense masked nothing, death's iron tang remained. Tyrion lit a candle at an alcove dedicated to the stranger and murmured a prayer new to his lips. "I ask no crown, no lordship," he said. "Only that tomorrow's tide rise less red." The flame flickered as though answering. An hour later he limped to the Tower of the Hand to find Podrick asleep over scrolls. He draped a cloak over the lad. Every parchment detailed supply counts, casualty lists, or council summons. The weight of them anchored Tyrion to what tomorrow demanded. Yet he felt it slip each time he closed his eyes. Dragons in the east, ice in the north, shadows in the south, undead knights in the Queen's cellar. How could one dwarf marshal these tides? He did what he could. Wrote letter after letter to Riverrun, to the Eyrie, to Sunspear, to Pike, to Old Town. He sealed each plea with wax-bearing bronze-borrowed ring stamp. He begged for swift horses, begged for lordly attendants, begged for sense. A small man's ink might yet change the course of giants' swords. In the deep watches of the night Cersei woke to find her bedchamber chilled though summer lingered. An opened window let pale beams spill over the bed, across her bare shoulder, and she shuddered though she would never confess fear. From the corner the severed hand in its jar sat upon a marble shelf, fingers twitching every now and then. She rose in silk shift and crossed to it. "My dear Ser Gregor," she crooned, tapping glass. "Soon you shall rise like the mountain you are meant to be, and I shall stand upon your summit to crush those who would diminish me." The hand spasmed violently, pressing flat against the glass toward her, as if hearing. She smiled. In her heart she saw Stannis' flayed body prostrate before this undead champion. She saw the dwarf grovel, saw Marjorie Tyrell's beauty curdle in terror. An army of such knights, untiring, unbending, would end the game. Her smile dimmed only briefly when she recalled Qyburn's warnings. Food for such a host could not be found in kitchens. They required other sustenance, the kind stolen from life itself. A small price. The city swarmed with poor yet and prisoners and traitors to feed a dynasty. In Riverrun, Edmure Tully read banners gathering like geese before south migration. Lords parleyed daily on hillocks outside the castle. Freys screaming for pardon, Karstarks waving black swords, Malisters offended by both. Standard-bearers from the Vale arrived with Lady Erin's stiff proclamation of neutrality. Yet rumor said Peter Baelish whispered different pledges under moon. Edmure's head ached. Above, the Blackfish counted wagons. Grain from the Trident, salted fish from Seaguard, casks of honeymead from the Twins. The realm's last harvest hastened toward Single Valley. He had lived through famine before. He recognized its breath on the wind. Robb Stark's tent once stood on those meadows. Blackfish felt the ghosts gather at every dusk. If the Great Council saved peace, would it save honor? He doubted such miracles. At Moat Cailin, Roose Bolton's ravens returned from the south bearing news of Tywin's death and Stannis' victory. He read in lamplight, eyes hooded. A squire brought mulled wine. Roose drank slowly, mind weighing chances. The Freys sought his fealty anew. Stannis' offer of pardon dangled like bait above snapping jaws. Yet the Iron Men stirred again along the stony shore, Euron Greyjoy sending black sails to reap what disorder sowed. Bolton rolled the scrolls and dipped quill. Letters to Dreadfort, to Carhold, to Barrowtown, plots shifting shape. The North would choose survival over loyalty if winter devoured all. Roose meant for House Bolton to stand atop that pile when the snows melted. South of the Neck, in a wood shivering with early frost, Arya Stark woke beside Sandor Clegane to the soot-sapping scent of damp leaves. The hound cursed aching wounds, then scowled toward south horizon where faint glow told of camps. "That's your King Stannis," he grunted. "Lion fire burnin' bright. Arya rubbed sleep from her eyes. My brother wanted alliance with Stannis once. Your brother's dead and Stannis'll gut you himself if it wins him the war. Arya ignored him, finger tracing the shapes carved into the dirt. Names she still whispered each night. Tywin she crossed out now, though her dagger yearned for his blood at her hand. Then she added new names. Cersei, Qyburn, the Red Woman, Roose Bolton. The list lengthened like a serpent devouring itself. Sandor kicked dirt over the carving. Names won't save you. Steel will. I'll have that too, she said. He spat. When the right face fits. He stared at her, brow furrowed, as though glimpsing a shadow larger than the girl. He wondered if she meant to kill him one day. Perhaps, and perhaps he would let her. Eastward, across narrow sea, Daenerys Stormborn rode along the pale brick wall of Meereen, dragons wheeling above like titanic crows. A ship from Pentos had brought parchment telling of Westeros thrown into turmoil. The hand of the king slain by shadow, the capital walls broken, a Baratheon rising, a council to choose a new crown. She stood upon the wall's crest, hair silver thread in dawn wind. They will devour each other, she told Ser Barristan. When their hunger leaves them ragged, we fly west. Barristan bowed. Yet dragons grow at their pace, your grace. To sail now invites legions of swords and spears unmet. She watched Drogon dip low, wings stirring dust devils on Meereenese streets. I do not fear swords. I fear time. Grey Worm approached, saluting. The wise master's gone. The slaves build fleet as commanded. Wood short, nails short, but ships multiply. Daenerys nodded. Let haste guide their hammers. When the gods give sign, we depart. In her chamber that night she dreamed of a throne forged of white blossoms instead of swords, and of a seven-pointed star dripping blood that tempered steel. She woke gasping, dragons growling in their pens. The sign raced closer on swift wings. At Dragonstone, Melisandre knelt amid cooling ash. Her vision had ended hours before, still she saw phantom afterglow. A quiet footstep behind, Maester Pylus bore a jar of water. He studied the char, eyes troubled. You burn yourself, he whispered. I burn falsehood, she replied. She sifted ash through her fingers until uncovered beneath rested the ruby slag fused to iron impurities cooled into a thin rod shaped almost like a dagger. She lifted it gently. Lightbringer, Pylus asked, half mocking. An ember, she said. The sword weighed still. She rose. I must ride to Snow. Lord Stannis needs you. Stannis is chosen, yet choice is path, not destination. She swept past, leaving the maester staring after. 2 days later, an ebony ship swept from Blackwater Bay under sail of bright gold sunburst, the royal galley escorting Maester Gorman Tyrell and Lord Paxter Redwine to Riverrun for the council. Atop its quarterdeck, Tyrion leaned into salt spray and wondered if he would return. Podrick clung to rail, green with seasickness. Bronn supervised casks of arbor red. Riverrun's expecting half the realm, Bronn said. Taverns'll gouge us blind. I have credit, Tyrion answered. Besides, lords grow pliable with wine. He gazed toward the shrinking city. On its highest tower the Queen Regent watched, a crimson speck in rising light. Steel glinted at her back. A new knight in blue-black plate, helm in the shape of a giant skull. Tyrion pursed lips. Pray the council moves swiftly, he murmured. For behind those walls something dreadful is awakening. South wind filled the sails. The galley turned river bend, city vanishing behind promontory. Tyrion allowed himself one breath of hope. In the cellars beneath the Red Keep, Qyburn drew the final stitch across the mountain's pallid throat. As lightning crackled beyond narrow window slits, he whispered words learned in Shadowlands, touched the stitched seam with 2 metal rods attached to coils of yellow copper, and waited. Thunder cracked. The corpse convulsed. A deep, wet gasp rattled the great chest as lungs found on life. Qyburn's grin stretched. Rise, he crooned. Eyes snapped open, amethyst cold, rimmed with bruised crimson. The mountain moved. In that instant, far to the north, a horn of ancient make sounded 3 mournful blasts upon the wall. Jon Snow felt it in marrow. The dead walked. A storm of snow and silence bore down from the lands of always winter, and the long night opened its jaws. Across ice and ash, fire and steel, men and monsters gathered. The Game of Thrones had become war for Dawn. Each beat of myriad hearts hammered fate upon the anvil of time. And somewhere in that tremor, shadow and light vied for a place in stories yet unwritten. Stories whose pages would be bound by the blades, the choices, and the fragile mercies of mortals who still dared to dream of spring. The wall of night poured over the horizon like ink spilled across a page, and with it came the bone-deep hush that fell upon every living soul perched atop the icy heights of the wall. Jon Snow clenched gloved fingers around the frosted stone Merlin, his breath fuming pale ribbons that vanished into darkness. Below, the world lay drowned in moonlight, silver dunes of snow rolling into forests so black they seemed to drink the starlight whole. The horn that sounded 3 blasts, ancient, cracked, almost too vast for mortal lungs, quivered once more in his mind. It rang along his ribs, a memory more solid than the chill wind knifing between wool and fur. Somewhere out there the dead were marching. He felt it in Ghost's low growl, saw it in the way the direwolf's hackles bristled as though some scent foul as rot drifted on the breeze. The watch stirred behind Jon, men fumbling for torches, for dragonglass arrowheads, for prayers half-remembered from childhood. Sam Tarly reached the parapet, lugging a crossbow whose string quivered almost as fiercely as his hands. Eastwatch sent Raven, Sam wheezed, breath hitching. Said the sea froze a mile out just as the old stories claim. They can walk on water now. Jon's jaw nodded. Then water's no longer a moat. We hold the wall, or everything south burns. A chorus of horns echoed from the west, 2 blasts, riders returning. Jon turned to the heavy wooden lift clattering upward. When the cage crested the top, it revealed a dozen black shapes bent by exhaustion. Ed Tollett staggered out first, face gaunt beneath rimed beard. Scouts from the Shadow Tower, Ed rasped. We saw fires, blue ones, moving through the gorge. Whole villages burned without smoke. Snow fell afterward, burying the ashes. Numbers? Jon asked. Ed shook his head. Couldn't count. Every tree seemed to move. Jon glanced down the wall's central stair to where old Mormont's grizzled raven hopped restlessly among the stairs. Get warm, he told Ed. We sound the muster, every brother on the wall tonight. Hundreds of leagues south, the riverlands lay in a hush of another sort. Dawn fog-laced fields scarred by seasons of war. Riverrun's banners, tall trout on red and blue, snapped weakly as wind teased frost from moorland grasses. The keep's great courtyard churned with horses and servants and heralds from half the realm, each stamping about, muttering of latrines too few and hearths too small. The great council convened in 3 days. Robb Stark's ghost seemed to haunt every stone of Riverrun. Lords whispered his name even while studying new alliances. The north battered yet unbowed, the Vale perched aloof, the Reach wounded, the Westerlands decapitated. The Stormlands split between Stag brothers and Tyrell petals drifting in the wind. Now ravens arrived hourly bearing fresh oaths of attendance or excuses cloaked in politeness from vassals once certain of their place in the world. Inside the Lord's solar Edmure Tully sat hunched over a map pocked with colored pins. Brynden Blackfish stood behind him, arms crossed across breastplate dull with travel dust. Lord Brax of the Westerlands paced nearby, flanked by a pair of Frey envoys who spoke more with narrowed eyes than tongues. Lady Brienne of Tarth entered, the blue of her cloak striking against damp stone. Every head turned her. Great height commanded attention without attempt. She bowed to the Blackfish, then to Edmure. Ser Jaime rides within a day, Brienne announced. He brings a dozen knights sworn to honorable conduct. He means to cast his vote as Warden of the West by right of blood. That blood now flows colder, muttered Lord Brax. Brienne's gaze settled upon him, calm as lake water. Cold water still drowns a fool. The room quieted. Blackfish offered a flicker of approval. Edmure exhaled. If Ser Jaime stands for peace, he'll find welcome. But my small folk remember lions who laid waste to their fields. One misstep and we have fresh war within these very walls. Brienne nodded once. He knows. And the Queen? Edmure asked. Brienne's joy tightened. Queen Cersei sent no word, but whispers say she readies some monstrous champion to display her strength at this council. Frey envoys exchanged glances. The taller cleared his throat. Monstrous, you say? House Frey has seen monstrous acts aplenty. Red Wedding still rots in memory. Then House Frey may consider this council an altar for atonement, the Blackfish said. His words sliced the chill air. The envoys bowed stiffly. We atone by votes cast for order. See that you do, Brynden replied. Outside the Solar, Lady Sansa Stark moved along the gallery with a quiet grace forged in shadow. Her handmaiden, Jane Poole, kept pace. Sansa's eyes rested on banners below. Karstark sunburst snarling at Glover Beerpaw, Manderley's merman near Frey's twin towers. Once she dreamed of banners as proof of chivalry. Now she saw them as wolves' pelts, prizes of cunning and fear. "Write a letter," she told Jane, voice low, "to Lady Royce in the Vale. Remind her the Ares food stores weigh heavy, winter or no. And remind her of Jon Arryn's words. The North remembers who nurtured exiles." Jane dipped her head. Sansa turned to the courtyard just as a raven flapped clumsily to a winch beam before her. A wax-cracked message dangled from one leg. The seal, a dire wolf howling within a fiery heart. Her breath caught. She broke the seal. 2 lines in Davos Seaworth's rough hand, "Your brother at the wall." The Dead March. Grain promised, men needed. Below, Stannis Baratheon's harsher stroke, "Stand with the living or kneel before the dead." Sansa closed her eyes a heartbeat, then strode toward the Solar. Choices sharpened, cold as northern steel. In King's Landing, a storm heavier than the one brewing in the north thundered behind scarlet curtains. The Queen Regent's private audience chamber glowed with lamplight. Perfume could not banish the stench of alchemical smoke seeping from cellars. Cersei paced like a lioness trapped in a pit. Beside her, Qyburn bent over a gilded cage where ravens skittered in agitation. "How soon?" Cersei demanded. Qyburn's smile belonged to a cat that scented blood. "Hours, Your Grace. My champion breathes already." He walked 3 steps unaided. "When the sun sets twice hence, he shall mount a warhorse, and no blade of mortal forging shall harm him." Cersei's eyes glittered with cruel delight. "The council will kneel or be sundered. Let them prattle of oaths. I will show them the cost of defiance." Outside, armored boots thudded. The Kingsguard commander, Ser Balon Swan, entered, helm beneath arm. He bowed. Word from the docks. The galley carrying Lord Tyrell and the Imp's party rounded Maidenpool. Storms slowed them. They may not reach Riverrun in time. Cersei's smile sharpened. "Send riders along the King's Road. Spread word the galley foundered on shoals. If rumor outpaces truth, truth becomes rumor." Swan hesitated. "If the galley arrives, then the lie is theirs to disprove, and doubt remains." She waved him off, turning to Qyburn. "Have your champion wear the cloak of the Kingsguard. A giant in pristine white will remind them whose blood commands the throne." Qyburn dipped his head. "As you decree." Unseen by them under crook of stair, a small boy listened. One of Varys's mites returned to hidden webs. His bare feet padded swift as thought, threading secret tunnels toward the harbor where a certain bald spider still plucked strings, though whispers said he meant to flee with the last tide if counsel failed. Stannis Baratheon's camp sprawled now across the wide meadows west of Rosby. Where once his pennons bore only the crowned stag, fiery hearts rose everywhere, sigil of the Lord of Light that men half revered, half feared. Yet tents at the camp's very center bore neither stag nor hart. They flew a white bunt signifying justice by men's law. Davos had insisted. He shared bread with men of 6 houses, Fell, Florent, Penrose, Seaworth, Horp. They ate in silence, listening to the distant rumble of wagon wheels as the first convoys from King's Landing trundled toward the North Road laden with oats and barley. Sir Richard Horp thumbed a flagon. "Grain today, gossip tomorrow. The city murmurs of the Queen's monster. They call it Pain reborn, taller than Hotter the Giant's child." Pain was mute, Davos said. "A silent threat can still die the same." Horp raised a brow. "You saw that crater of fire that burned color of envy and blood. How many men face such sorcery without their bowels loosening?" Davos set bread aside. "If we meet them blade to, whatever it is, hearts may fail. But hearts still beat in men watching us. Our courage sparks theirs." From the main pavilion flap emerged Stannis, brow shadowed. He gestured Davos near. Inside, dusty maps lay pinned with a fresh cluster of markers, white tokens marching down from the north. "Reports from Carhold and Last Hearth," Stannis said. 500 men each ride for Riverrun. They bear Stark banners." Davos frowned. "The North chooses the wolf again? Or the North sees that wolf as shield against winter? If Stark votes align with Tully, Arryn, Tyrell, they outnumber Baratheon claim. Then we must win hearts as well as right, Grace." Stannis's eyes were coals. "Hearts can be guided with light. Where's Melisandre?" "She rode east," Davos said. She seeks signs. Stannis' mouth tightened. Signs. My faith in shadows dims. I will not settle claim with tricks. We ride for Riverrun tomorrow, show them a king who walks unafraid of counsel, of trial, even of defeat. Davos bowed, and silently prayed the Red Woman remained far from Riverrun's gates. Across the narrow sea, Meereen's harbor glittered under dawn sun. 50 ships bobbed at anchor, trim cogs built of green Giscari pine, hulls stitched with copper nails. Daenerys Targaryen paced the rampart overlooking dry docks, Ser Barristan at her side. Smoke rose from forges where slave children once toiled. Now freedmen hammered red iron into rising keels. They will not weather a storm across the boiling sea, Barristan warned. These hulls are the swiftest Meereen can craft, Dany finished. She touched a post where dragon's teeth had carved grooves in play. I cannot give Westeros years. The long night stirs again. Dragons were birthed for that war. Barristan studied her quietly. In her eyes he saw the storm that once brewed in Rhaegar's. Fierce purpose tempered by mercy. Then we must gather allies fast as hulls gather barnacles. The 7 kingdoms may spurn a queen raised in the east. They will see fire on the horizon and remember the conqueror, Dany said. And they will beg for heat when ice snaps their bones. Below, Drogon shrieked, wings cracking air as he launched skyward. His shadow swept across the harbor, stirring slaves who had never before looked skyward with hope. At sea, Tyrion Lannister leaned over the galley's stern, scribbling notes by lantern. Rain-flecked parchment, salt spray smelling of rot and weeds. Behind him, Pod puked quietly. Bronn slouched near the tiller, counting coin. A commotion forward drew Tyrion's eye, sailors pointing at a bank of mist rolling across moonlit waves. Lanterns along the rail cast sickly halos. The helmsman cursed, the current twisted oddly. Then shapes speared through fog, longships, narrow, low in water. Black sails bore the kraken of House Greyjoy. Silence reigned but for creak of oarlocks muffled by wet leather. From the flagship's prow a man in patchwork cloak raised a curved horn carved from deep-sea leviathan bone. He blew, and sound like a whale's dying wail shuddered the air. Water rippled even under Tyrion's feet as though the sea recoiled. Euron, Tyrion whispered. The crow's eye. Chaos erupted. Arrows hissing, blades clanging on rails. Crossbowmen loosed from the galley's deck. Bolts clattered harmlessly on kraken shields, overlapped like scales. Grapnels soared, bit wood. Ironborn spilled onto the cog's deck, axes flashing. Bronn danced into the melee laughing, saber carving bright arcs. Tyrion ducked beneath the sweep of iron, stabbing at a knee with dagger. Podrick, still green about the gills, slashed wildly yet held ground. Then a roar shook the mist. A different horn, brass and deep, from astern. Out of gloom surged another longship. This one flying the golden kraken of House Saltcliffe, yet trimmed with fiery heart of Stannis Baratheon. Sailors in crimson jerkins stormed the ironborn vessel, fighting with zeal. On the prow stood Salladhor Saan, scarves fluttering in sea wind. He winked at Tyrion across the chaos. Thought I'd collect an old debt, imp? The Lysine captain shouted. A good man always pays his dues with interest. The melee pivoted. Shocked Ironborn found themselves between Selsails and Tyrell men. Euron's horn bellowed thrice. The flagship cut grapnels, oars backing water. Mist swallowed it just as suddenly as it had come. Remaining raiders leapt overboard or fell. Silence returned save for moans of wounded. Tyrion's heart thumped like a smith's hammer. He stepped over a corpse-bearing patch of white hair dyed blue. Pod sagged against rail. Bronn wiped sword on corpse's cloak. Salladhor's ship sidled near. I see we share enemies now, the pirate sang. Shall I escort you the rest of the way, or do you fancy another swim with krakens? Tyrion managed a grin. Escort, good captain. And the crown will double your previous reward if you deliver us in time. Salladhor laughed. Promises, promises. But I know the taste of war coin. Riverrun before fortnight, or my songs cheapen. Above, thunder rumbled, not from cloud but from far north where Jon Snow mustered men upon the wall. Tyrion felt the tremor through the deck and wondered if gods, old or new, still listened. Melisandre's journey north threaded her along the King's Road, still torn by years of armies. She rode alone, following omens visible only to her second sight, the caw of a three-legged crow here, the shape of a fallen branch like a flaming sword there. At dusk of the fourth day she reached a crossroads in half-ruined but shelter nonetheless. Only two other travelers shared the common room, a scrawny septon with threadbare robes and a sellsword with a faded lion tattoo on his forearm. She sat by the hearth, letting embers highlight the red of her hair. The septon crossed himself, murmuring a prayer. The sellsword watched her with wary curiosity. "Fire priestess," he said after a long pull on cheap ale. "You ride north while most flee south." "South holds wildfire and monstrous queens," Melisandre replied. "North holds truth." The man barked a humorless laugh. "Truth?" "Truth froze in the snows of Winterfell. All left is death." Melisandre's eyes glowed softly. "Death is not truth. It is only shadow beyond firelight." The sellsword rubbed his tattoo. "I'd rather shadow than fire. Fire melts flesh. Only that which is burnt away need not burden the soul." He spat into the hearth. "Sounds like rot." He rose, tossed coins at the innkeep, and left. The septon, emboldened by the man's departure, shuffled closer. "Forgive me, lady, but do you carry news of King's Landing? Does the faith still stand?" Melisandre regarded him. "The faith of the Seven is a house built on sand. Waves approach." He paled, fingering a chipped wooden mother icon. "Then all hope. Hope lies where dawn is born," she whispered, touching the ruby at her throat. It glimmered, casting a heartbeat of red on the icon's carved face. The septon gasped and drew back, but her voice soothed. "When fire meets ice, shadows flee." Night deepened, yet her gaze lingered on the window. In the sky, the comet's long tail, once bright red, now barely visible, but sparks sputtered at its edge. She smiled. Tomorrow's road would carry her to Moat Cailin, then to the Wall. There she would find Jon Snow. The visions could no longer be misread, a dark wolf bathed in morning light, sword of pale fire in his hand. Stannis might be king, but Azor a high reborn. Perhaps prophecy had a cruel sense of humor. Bolton banners flapped coldly atop Dreadfort's grim towers. Roose Bolton read fresh raven scrolls in his solar, a chamber kept unlit save for narrow slits of gray daylight. Ramsay stood by, restless fingers drumming dagger hilt. "Stannis marches for Riverrun," Roose murmured. "Baratheon fleet skirmishes Greyjoys. The queen readies some abomination. And the Night's Watch begs bread." Ramsay snorted. "Lots of begging these days. We could feed them crow by crow." Roose regarded Son's manic grin. "Cruelty serves purpose when it buys order. It buys nothing against whites." Ramsay shrugged. "Whites? Tales for babes." Roose's pale eyes hardened. "I saw whites 30 years past north of the Shadow Tower. They killed half my ranging party before dawn. Now they return." He traced a finger down river sketch. "If Stannis wins council, he commands north by default. Our chance lies in chaos. We must claim Winterfell before Snow's close passes." "Flay some nobles," Ramsay said. "Stamp Bolton's sigil on hides." Roose steepled fingers. "Flaying dead men yields no power. Capture living symbols. I want Rickon Stark. Rumor places him on Skagos, but Bran Stark, cripple, rumored alive beyond Wall. If he appears at council, northern lords might rally. Prevent that." Ramsay's grin stretched. "Send me north. I'll fetch a cripple boy." Roose nodded once. "Take 2 score flayers, ride light. Avoid Stannis's banners. Should you fail, Dreadfort's doors remain closed to you." Ramsay bowed with mocking flourish. "A warm welcome as ever, father." Arya Stark and Sandor Clegane crossed the Green Fork at a ford choked by drift ice, their horses snorting clouded breath. Sunrise tinged river shards pink. Ahead lay the King's Road curling toward Riverrun. Hounds trotted beside, lean and scarred like their master. "Council's fools will guard every gate," Sandor warned. "They see me, they'll string me up. They see your scars, they'll quake," Arya countered. "And I have names to claim." He eyed her sideways. "That list of yours never shrinks." "Because new monsters keep growing," she said flatly. He chewed that in silence. "If the Queen's monster proves real, you'd best hide behind me." "I'll stick him with Needle," Arya said. "Needle won't prick plate thicker than boar's hide." But a grudging note of respect crept in. She rode like a north wind now, sure and cold. He wondered if time came when she would leave him behind. Death might ride at her side like a shadow lover, she would never walk alone. The wall's torches burned all night, 1,000 small suns battling the dark. Jon Snow stood before Old Bear's empty chair in the common hall. Brothers filled benches, black cloaks, hard eyes, skin gone sallow under winter's early siege. Gendry, once a king's bastard, now a blacksmith of the watch, hammered a dagger on the anvil even as he listened, sparks flying like fireflies. Jon spoke. "We hold until relief comes. Stannis sends grain, we trust Davos Seaworth. But grain won't swing a sword. Each man here stands between living and dead. Murmurs rippled. Dolorous Ed said, dead behind, winter ahead. Sounds like a wedding I once attended. Scattered laughter broke tension. Jon's mouth twitched. Mormont believed the living must unite. When the king arrives, I'll press him to ride north of the wall, not south. The king? Rast scoffed. 2 kings south already, both with banners aplenty. A third will come, Jon replied. He felt it as sure as sunrise. But choose what name you will, Baratheon, Stark, Snow, we stand with anyone who stands against the night. Sam raised a trembling hand. Books say the others fear Dragonglass. Dragonglass daggers scarce, PYP called. Shadow Tower sent a sack. Half broke on white bones. Then steel and fire, Jon said. And courage. He looked into their faces, a patchwork of fear, defiance, resignation, and loved them for staying when deserts and traitors left. The dead ride hard. We ride harder. Outside, Ghost howled. His cry rolled into the night, answered by other wolves far distant, and something older still, a horn blast faint yet clear, one, then another, then silence. The watch stirred. 1 horn for rangers returning, 2 for wildlings, 3. Jon strode to the door. Wind blew scalding cold. From the forest edge torches flickered, bobbing like fireflies. Silhouettes of giants loomed behind, shapes bigger than mammoths. And behind them, a wall of white mist creeping south. Open the gate, Jon called. Stand ready. PYP muttered, we're welcoming giants now? If they flee what comes behind, Jon said, we should fear what follows. The outer gate creaked. A massive figure ducked under arch, Mag the Mighty's cousin, bones strung as charm around neck. He brandished an uprooted fur as walking stick but raised empty hand in peace. Behind him came wildlings ragged with frostbite, women carrying babes swaddled in furs, men dragging sledges laden with weirwood branches. At their center walked Tormund Giantsbane, ginger beard rhymed with icicles. His eyes found Jon atop stair. Snow, he roared. I bring gift, news worse than your nightmares. Let me in or die ignorant. Jon descended. How many? Every clan that still breathes, Tormund said. And the dead? More than stars. A hush stole through the brothers. Torches sputtered. Jon nodded once. Open inner gate. Ed grumbled. Invite winter to supper. Better winter at our table than at our throat, Jon said. Inside the yard, men-eyed wildlings like wolves enfold. Yet children's coughs, women's weary sobs softened some glares. Gilly hurried to aid a mother whose infant wheezed. Sam followed with blankets. Tormund faced Jon. The dead will reach the wall before moon turns. They have new leaders, white shadows with ice spears that freeze steel. Jon swallowed. Walkers. Aye. And worse, ice spiders big as hounds, dragging web of mist. Jon's thoughts flashed to Maester Aemon's tales. A shudder gripped him. We must send Raven to Riverrun. To the council. They must unite, or none of this matters. Tormund clapped his shoulder. Words on wings won't stop cold. Need dragon fire. Jon exhaled. And dragons are in Meereen. Then pray they fly fast. On the King's Road south of Harrenhal, Jaime Lannister rode beneath leafless elms tinged ghostly white by rime. Brienne matched pace, blue cloak fluttering. A dozen knights followed, banners furled to keep their allegiance ambiguous. Jaime's stump itched where gold hand-fitted, the cold bit metal fiercely. He eyed horizon. Never thought I'd ride to plead before Starks and Tullis. Redemption rarely walks a straight road, Brienne said. He chuckled. If there's redemption for regicide and worse, the gods have generous ledgers. They crested a rise. Below, ruins of an abandoned septry dotted a shallow vale. Within, broken walls. A pair of figures warmed at cook fire. One rose, a monk perhaps, by drab rope. Sunlight glinted, an icicle of steel. A crossbow twanged, bolt hissed past Jaime's ear. He twisted his horse, Brienne roared challenge, spurring forward. From behind rubble sprang men in patchwork leathers, outlaws of the Brotherhood long splintered. Jaime's knights met them in clash of steel. The monk hurled cowl aside, limbs too thin, face gaunt beneath shock of red hair. For Lady Stoneheart, he shrieked, loosing another bolt. Jaime's world narrowed. Rumors of Catelyn Stark's corpse risen in vengeance returned like ghosts. He wheeled toward the attacker, bolt grazed his pauldron. Brienne charged, greatsword sweeping. The red-haired man ducked, but Jaime's golden hand caught his wrist mid-draw. He wrenched, bones snapping. Brienne's pommel dropped the outlaw senseless. The rest scattered when 2 of Jaime's knights sounded horns. Silence descended quick as snow. Jaime gazed at the fallen man, heartsick. Dead women haunt us now. Brienne met his eyes. The realm drowns in unburied grief. They rode on, leaving the outlaw trust for local lords' justice. Jaime's mull of peace soured, ghosts would not heed councils or kings. In Riverrun's main hall the banners of houses ancient and young hung in wary company. Long trestle tables laden with trenchers now served as scribes' desks piled with charters and claims. At the dais Edmure Tully welcomed lords by rank, Mace Tyrell on crutch, his once florid face wan, Wyman Manderly rotund in sable-trimmed cloak, bronze-armored Yohn Royce representing the silent veil. Dornish envoy Lady Nym sat cool among them, eyes like sharpened ebony. Seats remained empty for Lannister and Baratheon, for Targaryen unknown. Sansa entered flanked by Blackfish. Conversations hushed. She walked with poise of queen though no crown adorned her. Lords murmured, the Wolf Maid, the Winter Queen, the Red Flower of the North. She inclined her head to each cluster, voice measured. My brother could not attend, the wall demands his sword. I cast vote for House Stark as his proxy. Tyrell bowed stiffly. And for which claimant does Winterfell stand, Lady Sansa? She met his gaze. For the one who fights the true enemy. Unsatisfied, he pressed. Name, my lady? Before she answered, horns blared beyond river. Gates rattled, hoofs thundered over drawbridge. Heralds cried, Stannis Baratheon, King of the Seven Kingdoms, Lord of Storms and rightful heir. Stannis rode in clothed in plate newly polished, no crown save the iron circlet about brow. Davos, Horp, and a handful of Queen's men followed. The hall's murmurs shifted to ripples of awe and fear. Stannis dismounted before the dais, bowed curt to Edmure, not an inch lower, and turned to assembly. I come not to beg favor, he said. I come to correct a false line and to unite this realm against darkness that cares nothing for crowns. Royce rose. High words. Proof. Stannis gestured to Davos. The Onion Knight presented parchment bearing Robert's seal naming Stannis heir in absence of trueborn sons. Another charter detailed Cersei's infidelity. Signed by late Lord Arryn and sealed by Pycelle's hand, though Pycelle now denied. Royce studied the wax, passed to others. Whispered debates erupted. Wyman Manderly squinted. Yet rumors speak of unseen murders. Shadows wildfire. The North remembers treachery. Stannis's jaw tightened. I sought what sword could not win. I regret but do not deny. Murmurs again. Cersei would have spewed lies, Sansa thought. Stannis gives bitter truth, which would sway more hearts. Lady Nym rose, voice smooth as samite. Dorne lost kin to Targaryen fire and Lannister steel alike. We crave peace. What guarantee does Storm's End offer? Stannis opened mouth. But then horns sounded anew, distant yet sure. A herald rushed in breathless. Lords, a delegation upon the river. Banners of the Golden Lion. The hall rumbled. Jaime Lannister arrived. Sansa's heart stuttered. Would peace drown before it drew first breath? Yet behind Jaime's banners flew a scarlet flag bearing a dire wolf in golden suns. Gasps rose, House Lannister riding beneath the wolf. Minutes later Jaime strode in, gold hand flashing. He bowed to the dais, to Stannis, to Sansa lingering there. I come not to claim a crown. I come to relinquish one. He drew a scroll, lifted for all. Here is my sister's signed abdication, under seal of hand Pycelle, countersigned by Grand Maester Balabar, naming Tommen of House Baratheon, by blood of Robert, rightful heir, with a council of regents chosen by this assembly. Uproar crashed like a storm tide. Lords shouted, argued. Stannis seized parchment, scanning. His face darkened. False, he spat. Tommen is bastard of incest. Cersei tries her last play. Jaime's gaze hardened. My sister paid a price, her own freedom. She will retire to the Silent Sisters. Some lords gasped, others laughed incredulous. But Mace Tyrell leaned forward. A Baratheon boy on throne ensures reach in Stormlands reconcile. Realm steadies. Wyman Manderly rumbled, boy's blood half-lion. Winterfell wary. Lady Nym whispered, Dorne cares little for lions or stags, we saw children slain despite promises. Debate erupted hotter than forge. Edmure hammered table for order, voice lost in din, rubble vibrations rattled banners overhead. Sansa watched chaos swell like black tide. She felt the cold blade of despair slip beneath her ribs. They would tear each other apart while White Walkers marched. She stepped onto table bench, lifted arms. The hall stilled by degrees, curiosity overriding fury. When silence near enough, her voice rose clear and sharp. Great lords, hear me. The dead gather beyond the wall. My brother Jon sends warning giants and wildlings flee before them, dragging babes across snow to beg refuge. What matters whose crown rests upon skull if skulls lie scattered upon lifeless earth? Choose a ruler who fights for living, or we meet our end disputing parchment and pride. Her words rang off vaulted stone. Some eyes narrowed, some softened. Stannis studied her with something resembling respect. Jaime's lips parted, astonished. Royce nodded slowly. Then new horns burst, 3 notes, danger. A messenger stumbled in, face white. Queen Regent arrives at gates with her champion. Sansa's blood chilled. Qyburn's monster. Edmure ordered gates opened under guard. Lords spilled onto battlements to witness. Down the causeway rode Cersei Lannister in mourning white, hair shorn close, flanked by knights. And towering beside her upon a stallion pale as milk rode a figure in armor the color of bruised night, 8 feet tall if inch, helm sculpted like death's own skull, visor strips glowing faint sapphire. Ser Robert Strong, rumor named him. The gates boomed shut behind. Riverland archers knocked shafts. Jaime leaned over parapet, aghast. Cersei lifted gauntlet hand in dainty wave as if arriving for tourney. Lords of the realm, her voice carried. I come in peace to place my son's claim. She gestured to the Colossus. And to show strength that defends peace. Below, the giant knight reigned, silent. Breath steamed from helm slits. A chill swept ramparts not of winter's bite but of unnatural dread. Stannis' eyes blazed. Sorcery again. Cersei smiled. Necessity, dear Stannis. Your shadows are giants. Balance. Mace Tyrell murmured to Wyman, if her monster fights for Tommen, lords may sway. Sansa felt a tremor, both fear and anger. She whispered to Brynden, gather northern bowmen. No arrow tips to helm, aim joints. Blackfish nodded, slipping away. Edmure called down, voice driving firm. Enter under peace banner and lay arms aside, or by my oath you remain outside walls. Cersei considered. Then she laughed. I fear no Trout's den. But very well. She dismounted, as did Ser Robert Strong, though dismounted seemed inaccurate. He slid to ground like falling tower. Joints grated. As they approached gatehouse, lords withdrew from battlements, tension drawn like bowstrings. Jaime hurried to intercept his sister, Brienne at heel. In the courtyard Ser Robert loomed over assembled hosts. Shadows gathered around him, though midday sun still high. Children of servants cried. Fled. Horses balked. Stannis strode forth. You bring abomination before sacred council. Stand aside. Cersei's smile sweetened. Ser Robert Strong stands champion against any who calls my son bastard. Name the liar and face judgment. Gasped. Stannis' hand went to sword. Davos caught his elbow. Sansa's heart thundered. If Stannis accepted, monster would butcher him. Yet truth demanded someone answer. The gods, fickle though they were, chose that instant to send fresh commotion. A raven descended, feathers black as night, alighting on Sansa's outstretched arm as if drawn. She untied scroll. Wax of Night's Watch. Voices dimmed as she read. Her lips tightened. She handed to Royce, he read aloud. We are the watchers on the wall. The dead come with ice and storm. We plead for every sword. Winterfell's sons and daughters stand first, but all must follow. Light the beacons, send steel and fire. By order of Lord Commander Jon Snow. Silence deeper than crypt's swallowed courtyard. Even Ser Robert seemed momentarily stilled. Stannis lifted chin. There is her judgment. Court of men can wait, war against death cannot. Jaime stepped to center. I will ride north. Lion Knights will ride with me. Royce declared, the Vale stands the Ares riders. Manderley bellowed, White Harbor's ships bear grain unto Eastwatch. Mace Tyrell, hesitant at first, finally nodded. The Reach will plant seed in stony ground if need be. Cersei's face contorted from triumph to rage. Fools! You abandon crown for superstition. Stannis faced her. We abandon nothing. The crown waits on victory over death. Your champion may march to the wall, prove strength there. Cersei opened mouth, but Ser Robert turned slowly, visor fixed on Northgate. As though he heard drums distant, he took one ponderous step, then another. Cersei reached for his gauntlet. No, he paused. Snowflakes drifted, though sky clear. A murmur rose. Melisandre entered through the same gate, alone, hair aflame in sun. Ruby at her throat pulsed. Eyes glowed crimson as banked coals. She raised voice ringing as temple bell. This champion is shadow dressed in flesh. It bears no soul, no heat. Against the others it will shatter like glass. Ser Robert lunged. The motion blurred. Yet she merely lifted palm. Ruby blazed sudden white. The giant froze mid-stride, armor groaning. Steam hissed from seams. Qyburn cried, darting forward, but Brienne blocked him. Fissures spidered across Ser Robert's breastplate, frost rim alp around cracks. Then, with a sound like shattering marble, the giant knight split asunder. A stench of formaldehyde wafted, mingled with something older, fouler, grave cold rot. Within shattered plate lay the gray, withered remnants of Ser Gregor Clegane's flesh, reanimated muscles now slack, eyes dull. Gasps erupted into chaos. Cersei screamed fury and grief in equal measure. Qyburn knelt weeping. Melisandre lowered hand, ruby dimming back to red. Fire consumes darkness, she intoned. But only the living flame can hold it. Stannis gazed around. Now choose. Council may name king later. But first, ride. Sansa stepped to him. Winterfell opens gates to any host that marches. She turned to Jaime, to Royce, to Manderly. We ride together, or we die alone. Voices rose, not in argument but in vows. Shields struck spears. Somewhere a young squire began to sing an old northern marching song. It spread, discordant yet stirring, taken up by Tyrell men, by Vale knights, even by Stormlanders once sworn to Renly. Cersei staggered, eyes wild. Jaime caught her arm. Sister, the game changes. Live to play another day. She wrenched free. I will never kneel. No, Jaime murmured. But you may stand aside. He led her toward a carriage, silent. Qyburn followed, clutching shattered helm. Above ramparts ravens wheeled, croaking. Sansa looked skyward. Snowflakes still drifted, though sun glared bright. An omen of unnatural storm ahead. Edmure shouted orders. Stable hands to saddle 2,000 horses by dawn. Blacksmiths to forge spearheads from plowshares. Manderly scribes tallied grain wagons. Royce arranged falcon messengers to Aerie. The hall that once held threats now rang with purpose. Stannis turned to Melisandre. Your place is at the wall. She bowed. The prince promises dawn. I follow flame. She met Jon Snow only in vision, yet already felt his shadow upon her path. Prophecy rarely lied, only mortals misread. She would see soon enough if her reading this time proved true. Night fell heavy on Riverrun as camps bustled with fevered energy, armies forging unity from fear. In her tent Sansa found quill and parchment. She wrote by candlelight to Jon, help is coming. The realm rides for the wall. Hold fast, brother. She sealed it with dire wolf wax and carried it herself to the rookery. A silent white raven watched her approach as though waiting. She tied message to its leg and whispered, fly swift. The bird launched into cold night, wings ghostly in moonbeam. From rampart she watched it vanish north into darkness beyond torches. And beneath that vast sky studded with stars, faint auroras rippled, a pale green sheen shot through with blood red, as if ice and fire already waged silent war in the heavens while mortals scrambled to join the fray. Sansa wrapped cloak tighter, but the chill was not merely wind. It was the breath of the long night stirring, ominous, inexorable. Yet for first time in years she felt not helpless but ready. She had found her voice, her courage, and a realm fractured though it remained, beginning to remember itself. Down in the camp, Stannis stood before rows of blazing braziers, Davos at his side. Soldiers of North and Reach, Vale and Storm, River and Dorne gathered to hear their patchwork king. Flames danced across armor and bare faces alike, throwing every man's shadow long upon the ground, shadows now converging, overlapping until one vast silhouette blanketed the field, no longer a lion's, nor a stag's, nor a wolf's, but a single shape human. Resolute. Stannis raised sword. We ride at first light. A roar answered, ragged, fearful, yet hopeful. In the hush that followed, Melisandre watched the fire's heart. She saw an image rising. A dark wolf crowned in sparks, standing not at the wall but on shattered ice beyond, sword of starlight in hand. Beside him wings beat, not dragons but ravens, a swirl of black that formed shield. Around him stood figures, a one-handed knight in white, a maiden knight in blue, an onion-sigiled lord, a maid with hair of sunset copper, a red priestess whose own face dissolved in flame. The dead surged, yet the living pressed forward. Her ruby pulsed. The vision blinked. She smiled. Dawn would demand sacrifice, but dawn would come. Far to the north, Jon Snow watched horizon. In the distance pale fire flickered. Maybe torch lines of giants, maybe the first icy glow of the enemy. He felt weight of command settle heavier than any cloak. Yet under that weight stirred fire. The memory of Winterfell's hearths, of brothers and sisters that the world had scattered but not forever lost, of a realm unexpectedly riding to his call. He drew Longclaw, its Valyrian steel shimmering faintly. Ghost pressed warm flank against his knee. Snowflakes kissed blade, hissing away like ghosts of their own. "Hold the wall," Jon murmured to the night. "Hold the world." And somewhere beyond sight, dragons beat wings against chains of distance, krakens slithered beneath black waves, wolves howled, men and women who had never met bound their destinies with unseen threads woven by fear, hope, prophecy, and relentless time. The board was set, the pieces in motion. The final game would not be played for thrones, but for dawn itself. The first snows of true winter sifted down upon Riverrun through a dawn the color of tarnished steel. Cold clung to every surface, flagstone, breastplate, beard, like a living thing gnawing at warmth with tiny, patient teeth. Campfires guttered and smoked, the wood too damp now to blaze. Yet the valley rang with purposeful noise, half-exhausted smiths finishing spear points, sutlers loading grain, stable boys urging mounts into ordered lines. Stannis Baratheon's heralds, their horns rapped against frost, sounded assembly at every quarter hour, and at each blast the host of kingdoms once sundered drew a little closer to readiness. In the castle's godwood a thin crust of ice crackled under Sansa Stark's boots. She had come seeking stillness before the march, but through the bare, twisted branches she heard the yards beyond alive with new alignments, Tyrell and Tully archers sharpening shafts beside Northmen. Valemen folding tents opposite Stormlanders who still muttered prayers to the Seven while feeding fire with weirwood chips. Not 3 days past those same men had eyed each other across a room like wolf and boar. Now they shared soup seasoned by fear of a single foe. Fear, she thought, and hope, for if they believed utterly in failure they would flee, not assemble. A soft footfall. Sansa turned to find Lady Brienne approaching beneath the reddening boughs, her cloak rimed with frost. The knight inclined her head. "Your pardon, my lady. Lord Edmure asks if you will ride at dawn or remain to oversee wounded." Sansa's breath plumed. "I ride. Winterfell's voice must join my brothers on the wall, and I would see him with my own eyes before the darkness comes." Brienne nodded once. "I will escort you. Ser Jaime rides with Lord Manderly's vanguard, but his oath extends to your safety as well." A flurry of thoughts flickered, memories of Jaime's guarded glance upon her arrival, of whispered confessions in the Sept at King's Landing long ago, but she tamped them down. "Tell Ser Jaime I require no lion's guard. But I'll not spurn the sword of a true knight." Brienne's face colored, whether at the compliment or the implicit slight to Jaime Sansa could not tell. The taller woman bowed and withdrew. Sansa rested a palm on the heart tree's trunk. The bark was freezing, yet beneath she fancied she felt a faint pulse, as if sap still ran slow and strong despite the cold. She bent her head and prayed, to old gods and new, to any who still bent ear to mortal pleas, for courage, for clear sky, for the wall to hold. 3 leagues outside the castle walls, Melisandre watched the dawn marinate the sky in bruised rose from the saddle of her ash-gray mare. She wore neither cloak nor gloves. The cold could not bite what the fire within had claimed. Ahead, the King's Road arrowed north through low hills whitewashed by frost. In every dip smoke rose where outriders kindled signal fires. Stannis's order, that the army might follow a trail of ash when snow thickened by night. Hoofbeats crunched behind her. She turned as Ser Davos Seaworth arrived, battered onion ship sigil newly repainted on his shield. His beard bristled with ice crystals. His good hand rested lightly on sword hilt, the pouch of finger bones absent these many months, yet the habit of touching it remained. "My lady," he said without warmth, "the king rides within the hour. He begs you keep to the van and spare the men your visions upon the march." A faint smile. "The king fears shadows at his back. He fears unrest. Too many banners, too little trust. Trust is candle flame, Lord Davos. A breath can snuff it, but a breath can also spree it. It," he grunted. "Fine words. Keep them for council fires. North of Moat Cailin, words freeze in throats." Melisandre's gaze drifted to the horizon. "North of Moat Cailin, the gift and curse of fire will show itself. Pray your king embraces both." Davos shifted in the saddle. "I pray for daylight tomorrow. Beyond that, I trust plain steel." "Steel shatters on ice that was never water," she murmured, but he had wheeled away, cloak snapping like a tattered sail. She watched him go, then reached into the folds of her gown and drew forth a small crystal vial. Within, a single drop of dark blood clung to glass. King's blood, spared from last ritual yet still potent. She unstopped it, tilted the vial so the drop slid against her ruby. The stone drank it greedily, pulsing once, twice. Far away, in the deep heart of winter, something stirred, turning its cold blue gaze southward. She felt it and smiled with sadness. The game quickened. South and east along the King's Road, Jaime Lannister guided Honor, his new dapple stallion, purchased from a Bravosi trader for twice its worth, through columns of reach levees. The air was thick with the smell of menthol and crushed pine. Tyrell chirurgeons smeared the salve beneath every soldier's nose to blunt the odor of unwashed wildlings, they said. Jaime doubted mint leaves would mask the stench of fear once the dead arrived. He caught sight of Ser Randall Tarly ahead, scolding a pikeman for ill-shouldered kit. Beyond Tarly, the host became a kaleidoscope, the green and gold of Highgarden interleaved with the moon and falcon of the Vale, with Karstark sunbursts, Mormont bears. Even a scattering of broken lion banners borne by landless knights who refused to forsake old fealty. They saluted when Jaime passed. He returned the gesture, though unease tugged like a fishhook. These men followed him not for love but because no lord of Casterly Rock stood above him to command otherwise. Once he would have reveled in their obeisance. Now each bowed helm felt a stone added to the pack of his sins. Ahead, Brienne waited at a crossroads cairn, her cloak newly patched where the outlaw's quarrel had torn it. She raised a hand. Jaime drew rein. "Horses fresh?" she asked. "They'll last the league." "Your lady." "Sansa rides with Lady Enwyam and Ser Garth Tyrell. No harm will touch her." Jaime nodded. His golden hand glinted. Sunrise had found a break in the clouds, turning river ice to shards of orange fire. For a heartbeat he imagined that light on Cersei's hair the day they were crowned lovers atop the Tower of the Hand. The memory scalded. In its place came the sight of her this morning, pacing her narrow chamber in Riverrun, stripped of finery, eyes slit mad with iconoclastic fury. She had not spoken farewell when he left, only spat that he had betrayed blood for bastards and black. He wondered if he had. Yet Jon Snow's raven lay open on his saddle roll. Ink stiff, words plain. Betrayal or not, honor demanded he ride north. A horn moaned distantly, Stannis' call to saddle. Brienne touched her reins. "Best we ride." Jaime spurred Honor forward and allowed the press of men to swallow him. A week later the host crested the ridge south of Moat Cailin. Winter's fist had closed hard. Snow hip-deep along the flanks of hillocks. Wind keening like a choir of knives. Loggers from the neck raced ahead daily, felling black spruce to lay corduroy track across swamps gone rigid with half-frozen muck. Even so, carts sank, horses broke legs, and at every night camp the rolls of the dead were read beside fire. Moat Cailin itself squatted amid gray pools, its 3 watchtowers jagged as broken teeth. Beneath those stones a ragged garrison of iron-born survivors still clutched spears. They came out shivering beneath white rags, palms up, begging ferry to the south if only the host would let them flee the storm. Stannis granted safe conduct. On condition they marched at van as shield-bearers till nightfall. Most agreed. Those who balked found ropes. That night Davos watched fires flicker through arrow slits in the Black Tower. The ruin served as headquarters, wind wailing through arrow ports like damned souls. Stannis labored over maps by tallow candle. Davos poured him stiff ale though the king seldom drank. "We cannot wait for grain wagons," Stannis growled. "Supply line stretches like the wall itself and half as sturdy." "Then we forage," Davos said. "Frozen farms can still offer grain silos." "Riverland's men nowhere." Stannis' eyes burned. "Riverland's men follow Lord Tully. Lord Tully sleeps safe at Riverrun while we starve." "Ayo!" He broke off as the door swung open unannounced. Melisandre entered, snow melting on scarlet hem yet skin dry. Behind her, Maester Aemon, eyes blind, breath a pale thread, leaned upon a ranger's arm. Jonas Slint, Lord Commander of Nothing, had died in his sleep 3 nights past. Aemon had ridden south in his stead to plead. Aemon inclined his head toward sound of Stannis' voice. "Your Grace, I bring message from Jon Snow." Fingers groped for parchments. Melisandre guided them gently. Stannis took the bundle. He scanned line after line, jaw tightening. Davos glimpsed words. Eastwatch lost. Spiders on ice, giants down. Need dragonglass. Stannis looked to Melisandre. What must be done? Her eyes glittered. Lightbringer must be forged. She laid a slender hand on his mailed arm. Steel and sorcery together, in fire that cannot die. Davos bristled. We march to fight with men's swords, not smoke and mirrors. Aemon's blind gaze lifted. Smoke and mirrors may fail, sire, but winter's breath fails nothing. His hollow cheeks creased. Break spells or break promises. Those are our choices. Stannis exhaled slow. The sword you promised, where? Melisandre gestured north. In the heart of the wall's ancient fire, the black gate beneath the night fort. There the flame still lingers in stone laid by dragon's breath. Bathe steel in that fury and Lightbringer rekindles. Stannis turned to Davos. Escort her. Take 20 of your best. Find the gate. If sword can be forged, return to me before the wall. His eyes reflected candle flames. Do this and I knight you a second time beneath winter sun. Davos's stomach lurched, but he bowed. It will be done. He had faced storms on stepstones, pirates off lists, what was one more impossible voyage across frozen world. 200 miles to the north, Jon Snow stood upon the lich yard before Castle Black, moonlight silvering the field of wooden pyres awaiting torches. Corpses of wildlings and black brothers alike lay stacked in layers, flesh swollen from frostbite, eyes glazed milky. Then giants had helped build, their broad faces were grim lines under heavy brows. Beyond, new walls of icebrick and timber curved round the courtyard, makeshift redoubts built on Tormund's advice. The inner gate stood open only wide enough for a man, the outer lay frozen shut, now buttressed by boulders. Sam arrived carrying a fresh ink map. The giants planted birch stakes in the gaps east of the King's Tower, he reported. And Gendry finished 6 new barrel casters for the wildfire you found in the cellar. We've only 10 jars left, though. 10 maybe 10,000 if placed true, Jon murmured. He took the map, tracing incoming attack routes Tormund had marked. What of Molestown? Evacuated. The tunnels collapsed daily from frost heave. Women and children quartered with Har home survivors under the King's Tower. The pyres squatted between them. Jon stepped forward, torch in hand. His brothers and wildling captains gathered. A hush fell, no wind now, as if even the storm paused to witness. Brothers, Jon called. Free folk. Tonight we burn our dead so they might not rise. But remember them. Every life here bought time for those behind us. Honor them by standing. He thrust the torch into tinder, flame guttered, caught, climbed. Others followed until the night blazed, crackling heat battling deep cold. Sparks spiraled skyward like ragged constellations. Tormund joined him at the edge. Soon enough we'll roast alongside em if your lords south don't hurry. They ride, Jon said. Ravens claim Baratheon, Tyrell, Arryn, even Lannister banners on the King's Road. Tormund spat. Words on wings. The cold comes afoot. He clapped Jon's shoulder. You keep your people ready, croaking. My giants dig graves deeper than ice for the wee dead things. A boom echoed faint. A horn? Jon stiffened, listening. Again, from far east, 1 blast, 2. He swore. Eastwatch fell, but not their horn. Something mimics them. Something? Tormund growled. Ghost's hull cut the air, the direwolf's red eyes glinted from rampart above. Jon met the gaze and knew the dead were near. 3 nights later Davos's detachment reached the night fort, moon's pale ruin crouched massive and brooding beside the wall. Snow drifted sinuous through collapsed great hall, ice rats scuttled across flagstones. The black gate lay under the well, legend said no living sworn brother had opened it in centuries. Melisandre led them by torch down spiral steps glazed with rime. Torchlight through monstrous shadows on walls. In the blackness of the well's foot she bade the men stand back. A ring of dragon glass shards she carried from dragonstone she arranged on the ground. Then she began to chant, low, in Valyrian older than old Valyria, words sliding like molten copper through the air. The ruby at her throat flared. Stone groaned. The wall face ahead rippled as if molten ice. A mouth appeared, wide, weeping black water, lips of greenish frozen amber. Davos heard men gasp behind him. The gate spoke, a voice not sound but pressure in the skull. Who comes? Melisandre stepped forward. The sword that was promised. Silence. Then the mouth stretched wider. Hot wind, impossibly hot, blew from within, reeking of sulfur. Frost melted off Davos's beard in a spill of ice water. Melisandre drew from folds of cloth a steel blank shaped like a great sword, hammered rough but true. She thrust it into the heated darkness until only the hilt remained visible. Red fire roared. Blinding. Davos shielded eyes. The men cried out. The heat hammered his lungs. Then it ceased. Melisandre withdrew the blade. It shone white-hot. No, not white, but glowing with inner radiance, veins of gold swirling beneath surface like trapped sunlight. Flames danced along edge without consuming iron. Lightbringer. She turned to Davos. Take it, she said. Bear it to the king. He reached, but even through thick gloves the heat threatened burn. Still, he gripped the leather-wrapped hilt. Warmth surged strange, not pain but vigor, as if the sword pumped fire into his marrow. Melisandre smiled a weary smile. Now go. Dawn waits for none. Outside, the sky shredded in blizzard. Davos's party fought snowdrifts taller than horses, Lightbringer shedding glow enough to guide. But at dawn a shape emerged upon ridge, a lone rider, hair silver as moonrise, cloak snapping. Ser Daeron of the Queen's Guard, last of Dragonstone's riders, clutching parchment sealed with three-headed dragon. He rode close, eyes wild. A fleet sails from Slaver's Bay, he gasped. Dragons lead them. Then he pitched from saddle, arrow protruding from back, tip-glazed Hyalan, ice-knot steel. From the storm's veil riders shaped of frost cantered into view, whites armored in seabird bones, eyes blue as glacier hearts. They screeched in voices like shattering glass. Davos raised Lightbringer. Flame leapt higher. The whites faltered. Men rallied behind him, shields high. Melisandre lifted hands. Fire burst from sword's tip, an arc of incandescent wrath. The first white dissolved into embers. Others rushed like tide. Steel clashed on ice. Dragonglass daggers punched through mail as brittle as bark. Lightbringer carved paths of living dawn. But numbers pressed. Davos felt heat ebb. The blade dimmed with each strike, feasting on his strength. A scream, Ser Haber went down beneath talons. Then a roar overhead, not human, nor white. Sky split as bronze wings swept low. Drogon exhaled torrent of flame hotter than forge. The whites shrieked, retreating. Beneath the dragon, a ship's banner snapped. A three-headed dragon red on black. Upon Drogon's back rode Daenerys Stormborn, hair streaming argent. Behind her the sky swarmed with specks. Other dragons, smaller. Sails of 100 ships stained dusk. She circled once, flame washing earth. Whites fled northward like snow blown from roof. Davos lowered sword, trembling. Melisandre's eyes shone. The song, she whispered, begins. Daenerys brought Drogon to ground. Snow hissed where flame-blooded scales touched. She swung down, boots crunching. Her gaze met Davos's, then the sword. Is that Lightbringer, he managed. Forged for a king, but perhaps awaiting a queen. She smiled, sad and fierce. Titles matter less than purpose. She laid a hand on the blade, it brightened anew as though welcoming a long-lost friend. We ride for the wall? Davos nodded. And pray we arrive before it falls. Behind them, banners of Storm and Reach, Vale and North, fluttered up the King's Road. Ahead, the wall loomed through blizzard, a pale shadow stained blue by distant witch fires of the others. The pieces converged, sword of fire, dragons of sky, wolves of snow, men of every banner. And beyond, in the heart of night, the Night King raised an icy hand, summoning silence. Winter had come, but in its wake, dawn rode. Cold twilight draped the colossal wall in ribbons of cobalt and violet, spreading shadows that turned even fresh-laid snow to bruised iron. Jon Snow's knuckles whitened around the hilt of Longclaw as he watched the storm front bulging across the haunted forest. Clouds rolled like siege towers, titanic, ponderous, edged with flickers of lambent blue. Every instinct in him said those lights were no tricks of lightning. They were the baleful glow of something alive inside the storm, something that remembered warmth only as a memory worth erasing. Wind screamed along the ice rampart, hurling stinging pellets that felt almost sentient in their malice. But the wall itself did not tremble. Its ancient chill instead seeped up through Jon's boots, reminding him he stood upon the spine of a continent, and that if the spine broke, the Southlands would thrash helplessly and die. Below, the courtyard beyond Castle Black heaved with motion. Giants shambled to and fro like living ramparts, shoving timber beams into fresh-hewn sockets. Wildling men and Night's Watch brothers hauled barrels of pitch, sacks of obsidian arrowheads, and the last 10 jars of wildfire gendry had wrested from forgotten cellars. Maester Aemon, wrapped head to toe in gray furs, stood in the lee of the king's tower offering murmured counsel to anyone who paused long enough to listen. Tormund Giantsbane bellowed contradictory orders that still, somehow, created order. And everywhere, etched onto faces young and wizened alike, lay the awareness that dawn might never come if they failed. Jon forced his gaze away from the storm and descended an ice-scabbed ladder toward the yard. Each rung rang with steel on steel, a furious metallic chorus as men honed weapons against grindstones. Even Ghost, waiting at the foot of the ladder, seemed encased in frost. The direwolf's red eyes reflected pyre flames, yet his breath came in low, silent clouds, as though conserving strength for a final charge. Sam Tarly hurried toward Jon, clutching a ledger, ink already freezing in the bottle he tucked beneath one arm. "The western fire basket lines are finished," he reported, voice jittering with cold and nerves in equal measure. "But the giants say the gates beneath the Bridge of Skulls won't last if the ice spiders bring down more trees." "Tell them to fell pines across the gorge instead," Jon said. "Use the trunks as reinforcing beams. And see Gendry after he's wrapped spearheads in wax tarps so they won't frost fracture." Sam nodded, skittered away. At the north wall of the courtyard, Jon passed twin rows of pyres, new dead who had succumbed to cold, infection, or wounds from the rearguard's last brush with whites. The corpses lay in tidy layers, each wrapped in linen strips donated by wildling mothers who insisted on honoring both friend and stranger alike. Jon paused long enough to whisper a prayer, "Father, stranger, old gods, Lord of light, whomever listens," and pressed on. There was no time for prolonged mourning. The living required every heartbeat the fallen relinquished. He found Tormund beside a kettle of bubbling seal fat, greasing joints of a trebuchet. The wildling's red beard jutted with icicles. "You see that storm warming its arse against the sky?" Tormund asked, voice a gravelly rumble. "Never looked on aught like it, and I've seen winters eat whole villages." "We'll hold," Jon answered because he had to. "Fire, steel, dragaglass, we have tools the free folk never knew." Tormund barked a laugh that steamed in the air. "I and an army of green boys pissing icicles. Pray tools are enough." He leaned closer, dropped his tone. "You'll speak again with the giants' cousin tonight. They want promises, land south of the wall. Don't stiff him. Giants keep word. Break it, you'll find towers flattened." "I remember," Jon said, and did. Promises had already been inked on scavenged parchment. If dawn's warmth ever returned, perhaps wax and seals would, too. For now a spoken oath must suffice. A horn blast fractured the noise. Two long, reverberant moans. The yard froze as if the very sound had turned to ice. Two meant wildlings, not raiders this time, but another band fleeing the storm. Jon's pulse spiked. Every arrival stretched stores thinner, yet each body that could wield a spear mattered. Og the giant lumbered to the inner gate and hauled it aside. Through the swirling snow ventured a party ragged even by wildling measure. Perhaps 50 souls led by a woman whose pale hair lay matted against blood-spattered cheeks. At her breast she carried a swaddled infant who wailed not from cold, but hunger. Jon strode forward, signaled archers to lower bows. "Bread, broth, placed by the forge," he told a steward. "They fought the dead to reach us. They share our fire now." The woman lifted her chin. "Share? Or kneel?" Her accent betrayed far western origins. "Stand," Jon said. "Kneel to no man tonight, only to life. You'll find none here who place chains on those who cross for shelter." Disbelief flickered in her eyes, then thawed into gratitude so raw Jon had to look away lest he feel unworthy of it. He turned toward the king's tower and stopped short. Maester Aemon stood unaided, face tilted skyward, though he could not see the swirling clouds. His papery lips formed silent words. When he sensed Jon, he whispered, "The wall remembers what eyes forget. Something approaches through the dark beyond sight. Flames are sorely needed." Jon's throat tightened. "Flames will come, Maester. I promise." A crack echoed from atop the rampart. Jon and Tormund both looked up. A swathe of the stormfront had torn free, revealing a vast shape, an immense figure wrought of swirling frost and moonlit shadow marching between treetops like a titan come to life. Blue fires flared within eye sockets that were not eyes but frozen voids. Around its feet scuttled smaller shapes that glinted crystalline and obscene, ice spiders whose legs scraped rock with the screech of frozen glass. Tormund cursed softly. "This no tale for fireside now. It's breathing." Jon bolted for the inner stair, Longclaw slapping armor. He gained the parapet in time to hear the outer horn sound again, 3 blasts now, thou. The tower from which it came had been abandoned since Eastwatch fell. A taunt then. The enemy knew their meanings. Down the wall's eastern length, whites poured from the tree-lean, nightmarish silhouettes of men, women, children, each half-shattered yet relentless. Above them glided white walkers astride undead elk, blue spears raised, and behind them, at the heart of the storm, advanced the Night King. Jon's breath left him in a single plume that crystallized and fell like shattering stars. A quiet voice spoke at his elbow. Melisandre had appeared, scarlet robes whipping in the gale. "Lightbringer comes," she said, lifting her hand. On the horizon to southeast flickered a glow faint as embers in darkwood. Then it grew, a thread of gold, orange, scarlet, climbing, expanding, dividing into 3 streaks. "Dragons!" Drogon roared first, a bass thunder that shook icicles from the wall. His wings beat snow into vortices as he swept over the forest, flame gouting from jet-black throat, turning night to molten noon. Regal followed, green fire lancing through skeletal furs. Viserion, no longer half-rotted ice Wyrm but reborn in new life after death, circled above, blue flame locked behind jaws of frost yet unreleased upon its former kin. Raven banners snapped as the united host of the south crested the King's Road ridge. Torches blazed by the tens of thousands, spears glittered like starlight, at their head thundered mounted knights of the Vale, capes streaming, lances tipped with shards of obsidian. Behind them came the Reach's bright shields, the North's gray shapes cloaked in wolf pelts, Baratheon's stag hearts ablaze in red, and high above flapped 3 black sails whose red dragons caught the flames beneath. Ships hauled across land by teams of giants to serve as rolling siege platforms, their flammable rigging now burning like torches in the night. Jon's chest tightened, so many banners he had never dared hope to see outside a dream. Lightbringer itself blazed among them, held aloft by Stannis Baratheon as he rode a destrier lathered with frost. Beside him galloped Daenerys Stormborn, silver hair streaming, her eyes fixed on the massive white silhouette looming behind the enemy's front ranks. Jaime Lannister, helmless, kept her left flank, white cloak flapping stark as raptor wings. And Sansa rode behind a wedge of Karstark cavalry, face alight with a calm fiercer than terror, her red hair the only banner she required. The dead noticed. The Night King lifted an arm and the blizzard's howl rose to cacophony. Snow lifted from fields in sheets, swirling to blot torches. The temperature plummeted, steel crackled with brittle frost. Dragons faltered as currents warped. Drogon's fire guttered, scattered into sparks, Regal shrieked, pinned by crosswinds. But from the south 2 more shapes emerged. Ironbound wagons dragged by teams of rangers, each carrying a trebuchet arm aimed skyward. Melisandre's eyes blazed. She spoke words that hammered Jon's bones. Flames leapt from Lightbringer's edge and threaded across the sky in a ribbon which Drogon gulped eagerly, his flame igniting bright anew like a king recoating his sword in wrath. Regal drank next. Soon dragon fire roared brighter than any sun Jon had seen in his 25 years. The snow wall parted as if ashamed. With a howl that cracked stone, the white giant charged. It smashed a pine aside as though sapling, fell the next with a backhand sweep. Yet from behind Davos's vanguard raw barrels of wildfire arced in green streaks. They shattered along the giant's knees, engulfing it in viridian fury. It staggered, howled, ice sloughing like molten wax. A spear of dragonglass fired by a Karstark mangonel punched through its chest. Light exploded outward and the massive body collapsed into shards of steaming rime. The courtyard gate thundered open. Jon led brothers of the Watch and spear-hefting giants through, crashing into vanguard of whites. Obsidian axeheads shattered bone, long claws Valyrian edge parted mail and meat alike. Yet for every corpse felled, 2 clambered over it. A white child, a hair crusted with frost, jaw missing, lunged for Jon's throat. He caught it by the rags, flung it into a brazier where fire devoured it like parchment. Claws raked his gorget, ice-cracked teeth hard along his ribs. He fought on. Above, the Night King's gaze fixed on Daenerys as she wheeled Drogon around the wall's southern face. He raised one icy hand. From the storm emerged javelins of translucent blue, each longer than a ballista bolt. He launched them with terrifying calm. Drogon banked, 2 missiles missed, but a third grazed the dragon's left wing. Scales shattered, Drogon roared pain and dipped dangerously. Daenerys clung to spines slick with freezing rain, jaw clenched. Viserion shrieked below, torn between siblings. Blue flame leaked from nostrils, but the dragon hesitated. Then Melisandre stepped to rampart's edge, ruby blazing. She spoke a single command in High Valyrian. Jon glimpsed her form wreathed in flame. Viserion shuddered as though invisible chains snapped. His eyes, so long the color of glacier heart, flickered gold, blue, gold. An anguished bellow rent the night. He curved away, flame withheld. Lightbringer's glare cut the dark. Stannis spurred his horse straight at a mounted White Walker, blade blazing white gold. The walker's ice lance struck, fracturing under the sword's heat, and with a backhand swing Stannis cleaved the being in 2. Frost wind exploded from the death, knocking riders aside. But for every walker slain, Jon knew dozens of whites would fall a note. He saw it now as an entire phalanx collapsed, limp in the snow, puppets with strings severed. Still the Night King advanced, each step cracking the frozen ground. Jaime Lannister swiveled, shouted for Brienne's phalanx. Spears bristled with dragonglass. They charged point first. But the cold before the Night King slammed them to a halt. Horses screamed, flesh crystallizing, men dying before they hit earth. Ghost lunged from the parapet, slashing at the Night King's thigh. Blue frost spread along the direwolf's side, but he darted free before it took hold. Fur scorched white where heat met death. Daenerys angled Drogon into a dive, jaws wide. Fire the color of molten iron engulfed the Night King. Jon's heart hammered. Had the tide turned? But through the roaring inferno emerged the figure. Cloak of flame yet eyes untouched. Skin neither charred nor cracked. He hurled an arm of frost wind that smothered Drogon's flame mid-air and battered dragon and rider onto the frozen plain. Jon shouted her name. It vanished in the wind. From East Rampart thundered a horn call. Tyrion had reached a scorpion ballista mounted on a wagon. Gendry lit its projectile, a yard-long dragon-glass shaft tipped with wildfire pitch. Tyrion loosed. The bolt streaked across sky, green flame trailing. It pierced the Night King's shoulder. He staggered, first time Jon had seen him yield ground. A scream rippled through the whites like feedback in 1,000 skulls. But the Ice Sovereign wrenched the bolt free, emerald flames sputtered, died against armor of everlasting chill. Suddenly the earth convulsed. 2 ice spiders, vast as destriers, erupted from snow beneath the wall, mandibles scything. One plowed into Vale pikemen, flinging armored bodies as though toy soldiers, legs hammering. The second scrambled up the wall itself, leaving grooves of hoarfrost as it climbed. Sam, atop the king's tower, thrust a torch at barrels of pitch. A gout of flame spilled across the spider, it shrieked, toppled, shattered into shards that still twitched on the ground. Jon slashed through another rank of whites and broke into clear space. A white walker barred his path, tall, gaunt, spear raised. Longclaw met spear haft, steel shrieked on crystal. The walkers blowed Jared Jon to his marrow. He pivoted, hammering again and again. Finally he caught the haft beneath its guard, twisting. Dragonglass spear point splintered, and Jon's riposte took the creature at the neck. It shattered into glittering ice. And the Night King was there, silent, blade like jagged diamond in hand. Frost exuded from him. Jon felt sweat freeze on lashes. He raised Longclaw. Lightning exploded between them as Lightbringer cleaved downward. Stannis, atop a dying horse, drove the sword at the Night King's spine. But the ice blade met Lightbringer, a thunderclap of steam shot skyward. Stannis flew from the saddle, armor cracking. Lightbringer spun free, embedding in snow yards away, the flames flickering uncertainly. The Night King glided forward, ice sword poised for killing thrust on the prostrate Stannis. Sansa screamed from rampart walkway. Jaime kicked spurs, barreling toward. Too slow. Jon hurled himself, Longclaw screaming overhead in a diagonal arc. The ice sword snapped to parry, white flames blossomed at contact. The shock hurled Jon aside, his world exploded white. He rolled, ribs aflame from impact, senses swimming. A roar thundered, Ghost, leaping again, teeth at the Night King's calf. Frost burst along woven muzzle, but Ghost held. The Night King twisted, impaled the dire wolf through flank. A howl ripped from the beast, but jaws did not loosen. And then Arya Stark appeared, emerging from snow like vengeful shadow. Needle slid low, Valyrian steel dagger in offhand. She vaulted onto the Night King's back, blade flashing toward the gap at the base of his skull, only for the king to whirl, free foot shattering Ghost's grip, gauntlet fingers clamping Arya's throat midair. Time slowed. Her eyes blazed gray fury as ice crept along her jaw. Blue flame erupted from above. Viserion had chosen. The dragon bathed them both, but Melisandre's ruby shone again, transmuting the blast. Blue fire warped through crimson prism into pulsing white gold sheet that licked past Arya harmless, yet struck the Night King full. Ice armor fractured, crack spiderwebbed across his torso. Arya dropped, rolling aside, skin blistering but alive. The Night King roared, first sound he had ever made, and raised sword to strike at dragon, at girl, at everything living. Sansa's arrow found the gap Tyrion's bolt had punched earlier. Obsidian arrowhead melted through collarbone, burying to fletching. Blue fire sparked from the wound. Jaime's horse thundered past. He flung a dragonglass spear, one-handed, perfect Lannister aim, into fissured chest. The Night King reeled. Jon staggered up, eyes on Lightbringer lying half-buried, its glow dim yet steady. He snatched it, felt the sword answer with blinding heat. He ran. At 10 yards the Night King sensed him, turned. Blue eyes blazed in sockets of fractured ice. Jon roared, an animal bellow that tore his throat raw. Lightbringer met the Night King's ice sword. Neither shattered. Sparks of white and black cascaded. Jon pressed, muscles screaming. The sword in the Night King's hand began to melt. Not fracture, but melt. Dripping water that steamed as it touched Lightbringer's edge. Jon pivoted, sliding flare-bright blade under icy ribcage. Plunging up. Flame coursed out through, beyond, shooting streaks of sunrise into the storm clouds. The Night King froze, expression unreadable. Then split with a crystalline hum, crumbling into snowflakes and shards that turned to vapor before touching ground. A shockwave rippled outward, visible, a halo sweeping the field. Every wight convulsed, collapsed inert. Every walker still standing burst into spirals of snow dust. Silence fell but for crackle of distant fire and ragged breaths of the living. The storm above fractured into ribbons that bled pale dawn. Ice spiders dissolved, leaving only husks. Blue auroras faded, overwhelmed by nascent rows of sunrise. Jon fell to one knee, Lightbringer clattering aside. Ghost limped to him, flank bleeding yet wagging plumed tail weakly. Jon buried hands in white fur, tears guttering hot then freezing upon lashes. Around him, figures straightened, Sansa lowering bow, Jaime removing dented helm, Brienne kneeling beside fallen Stannis administering Maester's drafts. Daenerys slid from Drogon's neck, sprinted across churned snow to kneel beside Jon. She said nothing, only leaned forehead to his. Between them they shared breaths turned misgold in newborn light. Melisandre watched from rampart. The ruby at her throat now cracked, its glow fading like wan embers. She smiled, triumph and sorrow mingled, then sank to knees. Aemon reached to steady her, but she shook her head gently. "My work," she whispered, "is ash carried on the wind." Her body seemed suddenly brittle, face aged a century. The ruby splintered to dust. Melisandre exhaled a final plume of warm air and collapsed, robes folding over empty skin that crumbled into fine gray ash. A soft sigh of wind lifted it, carrying fragments east toward first hint of sun. Below, the vast host of Southrons, free folk, and black brothers stared at the field of silent corpses. Once dread legions, now brittle statues of hoarfrost melting into harmless slush. A murmur spread, swelling into roar. Cheers, sobs, prayers to every god once named and many never before uttered. Giants pounded clubs on frozen earth, sending snow geysers skyward. Dragons screamed triumph as they banked across dawn sky, breath finally steaming warm instead of flame. Spent but alive, Tormund strode to Jon, clapped him so hard the Lord Commander staggered. "Bloody crow!" he shouted, tears freezing in beard. "You stole the battle out from under my beard." "It wasn't me," Jon rasped, voice raw. "It was all of us. It had to be." Tormund admitted, looking around. At Sansa wiping blood from needle-sharpened arrowheads. At Jaime Lannister offering hand to ghost-pale Brienne. At Wyman Manderly commanding men to gather dead for honored burial no matter the banner they wore. "All of us," the wildling repeated. "World's never seen such a thing." "It might one day," Jon said, forcing a weary grin. "But we'll see to it no night like this returns." Daenerys laid hand upon Jon's shoulder. "And what of dawn?" "Dawn," Jon said, glancing east, "belongs to the living." He lifted Lightbringer one last time, its glow dimming to gentle sunrise yellow. "And the living shall decide what kind of world rises out of this snow." 5 days later, a gathering unlike any before filled the great hall carved of ice at the Night Fort. Rough trestles fashioned from pine beams served for tables. Dragonfire had hollowed the roof to a grand atrium open to morning sky. Snowmelt dripped from ice sculptures, makeshift banners carved by Gendry and his smiths. Jon stood beside Daenerys at the head. Sansa, her cloak of blue-gray silk lined with winterwolf fur, flanked him, while Tormund lounged in a chair obviously built for a giant. Stannis sat stiff, right arm in sling, Lightbringer across knees, the blade now dull iron. Its purpose complete, perhaps, or waiting another call. Jaime stood near Brienne, golden hand polished and glinting. Tyrion sat cross-legged on a cask, ink-stained and smiling thinly. Ravens perched high overhead on ice ledges, churring softly. Jon spoke first. "The Night King is dead, his host undone. But winter remains. Crops north of the neck are lost. Thousands displaced south must rebuild. The realm very nearly shattered. He looked over the gathering. We defeated death together. Let us now build life together. Murmurs of assent echoed. Wyman Manderley rose, belly straining his surcoat. The north will ship grain to the riverlands and beyond free of tithe. We know hunger better than most. Mace Tyrell, still limping, nodded. The Reach's fields stand fallow only where battle trampled them. Come spring, our bounty is yours. A debt of life for life repaid. Ariane Martell, sent to replace Lady Enwyam, inclined her head. Dorn grows oranges while snows bury citadels. Caravans will travel as far as the wall if invited. Jaime took breath. The Westerlands will reopen mines to coin the realm's debt. Gold for seed, 4 arms of peace. And for justice owed. Eyes flicked to Cersei, who knelt within the silent sister's corner, face concealed by linen hood. Sansa's gaze lingered but did not waver. Daenerys stepped forward. Dragons will patrol the skies. No man shall press border claims by sword while we keep watch. She met each lord's eyes. I saw throne to break a wheel of tyranny. Instead I found purpose in preserving dawn. I claim no throne save that which you grant freely. Stannis rose painfully. The throne must still exist. Law binds realm. But law without mercy breeds next war. He drew breath. I propose a council of realm. Great council continued to choose not one ruler, but 9 stewards, each representing our lands. Choose amongst yourselves. Let them sit in King's Landing or here, should they prefer, and guide peace. Roy slapped hand to chest in salute. The Vale will serve? Wyman boomed, north as well. One by one they agreed. Tyrion jotted names, cheeks flushed with quiet joy. For first time in living memory, Westeros glimpsed governance not determined by forged line alone, but by common cause. The meeting dissolved into dialogue: who would ride where, move which storehouses, rebuild which villages. Sansa embraced Arya, who had lurked unnoticed in shadows until that moment. The younger Stark's eyes glittered not with deathlust but something dangerously like contentment. She whispered, "List ends. There's nothing more to hunt." Sansa held her longer. Outside, carpenters carved holes in the wall for drainage of melt. Giants dragged felled timbers to patch breaches. Wildling children played tag amid broken white bones, soon to be burned in final pyres. Ghost limped but already chased snow hares. Jon found Daenerys on a ledge overlooking the forest. Drogon slumbered beyond, curled around cracked ice spire whose chill no longer bothered him. "Think the world can hold us all?" she asked softly. "It held worse," Jon answered. "Kings, usurpers, monsters wearing men's faces. It will hold 2 tired children who tried to save it." He brushed curly black hair from his eyes. "What comes next?" She smiled. "A council seat, perhaps? Or we fly south to rebuild what dragons once burned." He considered. "Or north to live in quiet valleys, free folk and farmers side by side." "Duty calls you, my love," she said, voice gentle. "But perhaps duty and hope one day mean the same." She turned to him, placed warm palm to his cheek. Snow drifted between them, melting before it touched. Beneath faint winter sun, above ruins now turning to new hearthstones, 2 people who had never dreamed of peace shared a kiss, simple, human, alive. Lightbringer, lying sheathed against the wall, glowed briefly then faded, its flame lending warmth where needed only as ember. High overhead a white raven took wing from Maester Aemon's outstretched hands, circling once before veering south toward cities it had never seen. Its feathers shimmered in sunlight that, from this day onward, would continue to rise over Westeros, heralding seasons still harsh, still ruthless, but at last mortal. The long night had broken, and the world breathed.